Hey guys, tonight we drift far from our glowing screens and busy lives straight into the deep hush of the Pacific Ocean. No GPS, no maps, no modern comforts. Just you, the night sky, and the subtle rocking of a carved-out canoe over infinite blue. Picture this. You're standing barefoot on a beach that smells of salt and crushed coral. Behind you, the last flickers of firelight from your village die down. Ahead, the horizon swallows all color into black. You tilt your head up, and there they are, stars, so many stars you almost forget to breathe. Every speck above is not just beautiful, it's functional. A compass, a clock, a calendar. Your ancestors used this shimmering ceiling to cross the largest ocean on Earth. And now so do you. Here's the fun part: you probably won't survive this. But hey, nobody said bedtime history had to be safe. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing our little night owl crew across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the fine grains of warm sand on your feet, but your eyes are locked above. The sky doesn't just sparkle, it speaks. There's a reason you were taught every name of every visible star. You don't need constellations drawn out like connect the dots. You know each point by heart. That bright one low on the horizon. That's your signal it rises due east in late spring. That trio in a slanted row, your ancestors called them the fish hook. Sail toward it and you'll make landfall in 4 days if you don't drift off course. Historians still argue whether early Polynesians really mapped the entire ocean with just the sky. But the oral traditions say otherwise. You know because you've memorized the song that marks the journey of each island chain. Yes, a literal song not on Spotify but encoded in your brain since childhood. You sing it softly under your breath as the wind picks up. Verse 1: Rise with the turtle star, sail past the sleeping shark land when the moon tilts flat. The moon! Let's talk about that celestial drama queen. Some nights it's your best friend casting a silver path across the water. Other nights it disappears entirely and you're left guessing by starlight. Still, even its absence gives you clues. You've learned to notice how the moon fades differently depending on the clouds. Long, thick veils hint at an approaching storm. Thin, fast wraiths might mean wind from the southeast. Moonlight becomes mood light and navigation cue. But your favorite guide, the Southern Cross. Tiny but mighty. It swings like a pendulum through the night, a slow, elegant clock that resets every 24 hours. You watch it move, counting imaginary ticks in your head. When it's upright, you're halfway through the night. When it tilts, morning's not far off. You don't wear a watch, you are the watch. One historical fact that's less dreamy: the earliest European explorers who stumbled into the Pacific were utterly confused by how these islanders found their way. They kept asking where the maps were. The locals pointed to the sky and said basically, right there. The Spanish wrote this off as myth. But when Magellan's crew got lost, who found them? Polynesian guides. No map, no compass, just an oceanic playlist passed down for generations. Of course, not everyone agreed on how it all worked. Some scholars think there must have been secret tools, sunstones, shadow sticks. Alien help. Yeah, we've heard it all, but honestly, you don't need alien tech when you have observational obsession and 1000 years of oral practice. The stars repeat themselves if you're patient. So you wait. You watch. You don't just look. You listen with your eyes. And oh, that gentle rhythm of waves brushing the hull. You've begun to sense how the boat tips just slightly when a current wants to pull east. You lean with it, subtly correcting with your paddle. The stars tell you where, the sea tells you how. Your breath slows. You've stopped thinking in sentences. You're drifting into pattern and pulse, into wave and wind. The stars don't rush, neither do you. And for a moment you swear you see something move in the sky, not a plane, not a satellite, just a flicker. Maybe a spirit. Maybe just your sleepy brain. But it comforts you. Someone else has sailed this exact path many times, and they're still here glowing in the dark. Your fingers trace the edge of the canoe, the wood warm and smooth beneath your touch. It's not sleek, not perfect, but it floats, and that's already a small miracle. You glance down at the hull stitched together with coconut fiber lashings, not a single nail in sight. Just rope time and deep belief. You probably wouldn't trust it if you saw it on land. It creaks like an old man and flexes slightly with every wave. But here on the open sea, it moves like it belongs. Because it does. This canoe isn't a boat, it's your continuation. You don't just ride it. You and the canoe share a nervous system now. Your uncle told you once as he patted the outrigger float, "This thing is your spine. Snap it and the ocean will eat your legs." And sure, that was meant to scare you, but it also made you laugh. Because honestly, everything about this canoe feels like it shouldn't work, and yet, here you are gliding forward. The truth is, the ancestors who figured this stuff out weren't working with blueprints. They were working with instinct experimentation and a lot of near-death experiences. They tried, they failed, they rebuilt. They watched how driftwood behaved in heavy swells. They copied the shapes of whales and the flow of flying fish. When a canoe didn't return, they learned. Sometimes the lesson cost them everything. Historians still argue whether these early crafts were primarily double-hulled catamarans or outrigger canoes during the earliest migrations. But here's what matters to you. Your craft is just stable enough to handle waves and just fast enough to escape a storm if you read the signs in time. You lean forward and dip your hand into the sea. It's warm, maybe too warm. There's a lesson in that. If the ocean's too gentle, the wind's probably dead. And if the wind's dead, you're not going anywhere fast. Still, the canoe's low draft means you can paddle it across impossibly shallow reefs through coral-laced channels, even skim over sandbars during high tide. A proper Swiss Army canoe. Now let's talk about the build. You start with a tree, not just any tree, but the tree. The one that wants to be a canoe. Sounds poetic, right? But when your grandfather said that, he meant it literally. You walk through the jungle, tapping trunks, sniffing bark, watching how each tree leans. You want something with heartwood that's light but sturdy. Breadfruit trees if you're lucky. Some cultures preferred acacia. You pick one that's just crooked enough to curve the way a hull should. Then comes the carving. It's a whole ceremony. You don't just chop it down and start hacking. You ask permission. You offer a chant. Some would even sleep near the tree the night before, hoping for a dream that says, yes, this one. Kind of like Tinder, but with higher stakes and fewer profile pics. Once you've hollowed the trunk, and we're talking days, sometimes weeks of scraping and shaping, you attach side planks using coconut sennit rope. Those lashings, they flex. That's the genius of it. European boats snapped under pressure, yours bends. It rides the waves, not fights them. And then, of course, there's the outrigger afloat, connected by curved arms to the main hull like a stabilizing crutch. Without it, you'd flip every time you blinked. But with it, you get just enough balance to dance on the edge of disaster. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some early Pacific cultures made miniature canoes for children not as toys, but as training tools. Toddlers learned how to balance and steer before they could fully speak, which makes sense. Better to learn sea legs before land legs. Tonight you sit cross-legged in the hull, your weight perfectly distributed. You know every creak now, that sharp snap near your left foot. Just a tightening rope, not a crack. That gurgle beneath the hull? A dolphin, maybe, or a current eddy. Either way, not a threat. Yet. Your paddle rests beside you, hand-carved and smooth, with a slight curve at the blade like a smile frozen in wood. Each stroke is gentle, deliberate. No splashing. You want motion, not noise. You're not in a rush. You're in rhythm. And that rhythm, it's not just physical, it's generational. The canoe you ride was likely designed off another that sailed 500 years ago. Every tweak, every curve, every patch of pitch or fiber passed down through calloused hands and oral diagrams. Nobody writes this stuff down, but you remember it in your body. The fire in your shoulders isn't pain, it's inheritance. The calluses forming on your palms aren't blisters, they're badges. The sea doesn't feel hostile tonight. It feels patient, like it's watching to see if you'll earn its trust. You hum a low chant under your breath, not for magic, just for steadiness. The sound helps you keep time with your paddling, helps you keep time with your thoughts. And out here, thoughts need pacing. You shift slightly, adjusting the weight so the outrigger dips just a little deeper. That'll help in crosswinds. You remember your aunt's advice, the canoe doesn't fight you, it mirrors you, which is basically ancient code for calm down or you'll tip us both. And honestly, she's right. The ocean doesn't need you nervous, it needs you neutral. Tuned in. The canoe, the paddle, your body, they're not separate, they're a system. One breath, one movement. You look back at the stars, anchoring your route with one last glance. Then forward into the invisible trail etched by wind and wave. You're not guessing, you're remembering. You're retracing a path 1,000 years old, carved in salt and moonlight, not ink. You're riding something older than any map. And somehow, impossibly, it still works. You rest your paddle across your knees and look up again. The stars have shifted slightly, just enough to tell you the night is moving forward, even if the water around you feels suspended in time. Stillness is a trick out here. The ocean only pretends to rest. You lean back, bones aching in the kind of way that feels earned, and scan the sky for your next guide, one of your oldest, most predictable friends. Not a constellation, not even a planet, just light drifting in long arcs across the heavens. It's time to read the sky clock. You don't wear time on your wrist. You read it in the rise and fall of stars. You notice how they tilt, how they shift. How one bright point begins its slow climb in the east just as another fades in the west. That's no accident, that's choreography. And the moon. The moon is the sassy cousin of the stars, always changing her look, always one phase away from mood swings. Tonight she's a crescent, low and thin, like a smile full of secrets. But you know what that shape means. It rises late and sets early. It pulls the tides just enough to shift your currents. You adjust your course slightly, barely dipping the paddle into the water. It's subtle work, this kind of steering, like flirting with gravity. Historians still argue whether ancient navigators used the moon primarily for timekeeping or navigation. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Some say the moon was just a decorative bonus, a nighttime lantern. Others say it was critical for gauging latitude based on the arc of its path across the sky. You don't care much for that debate. You only care that it works. You remember one particular lesson whispered to you when you were barely taller than the canoe's gunwale. The moon can lie, but its shadow doesn't. It sounded like nonsense then. Now it's everything. On cloudless nights, moonlight strikes the water and reveals a fine line of contrast, light on one side, dark on the other. Where that shift occurs, where it blurs into nothing, that's where you can judge the angle of travel. A compass curved and glowing. And then there's the wind. You know it like you know your own name. The warm, sticky breeze off your right cheek tells you you're still on course. You haven't named the winds, but your elders did. The morning breath, the sting of the stingray, the lazy slap. Every wind has a mood, a memory, a place it tends to come from. If you know the wind's name, you can know its story. A quirky tidbit: in some island cultures, young apprentices were taught to tell the time by squinting one eye and gauging the position of certain stars with their knuckles. That's right, your hands became the watch. 4 knuckles between the horizon and a rising star. Roughly an hour after sunset. Just don't ask how this works during storms. That's when you need feel, not formulas. Back in the canoe, you squint and count. That bright one rising there, you measure with your fingers, adjust your posture, and murmur the estimate. Midnight minus 2 knuckles sounds weird, feels precise. Feels a bird cries in the distance. You can't see it, but you know its call. Probably a frigate bird, night flyer, sometimes restless. They follow air currents you haven't earned the right to read yet. You envy them a little, but also they envy you. You get to float. They have to flap. And now you let your eyes settle back on the stars. Not the brightest ones, the subtle ones. The ones that shift slightly as the Earth spins. You're looking for a guide star, a zenith star. One that hovers almost directly overhead at a specific latitude. For you, that might be Altair, depending on the season. When it's above your head, you know roughly where on the planet you are. No need for lines on a chart, just you and your neck muscles getting a cosmic reading. Some Polynesian navigators called this reading the roof. A great phrase, really. Because the sky is your ceiling, and tonight it's cracked open with secrets. You squint up and whisper names to the stars, names given long ago by people who trusted the night more than the day. The sun blinds, the stars clarify, and as you drift, you begin to time your breaths with the pattern of the sky. One inhale as a bright star clears the horizon. One exhale as it climbs higher, a rhythm, a mantra, a way to not go mad in the immensity of open sea. You remember another old saying, one that stuck. The sky never repeats, but it rhymes, which means basically don't expect perfection, expect patterns, look for echoes. The same star won't rise in the same place every night, but the pattern will loop, and if you're paying attention, you'll loop with it. And that's the point, right? You're not forcing your way across the ocean. You're sinking with it. following celestial cues like a dance partner whose steps you've finally learned. Not that you won't step on some cosmic toes now and then, but still you're moving together. One more detail before sleep tugs at your thoughts. Star maps aren't drawn, they're remembered. And not as visuals, but as stories. You were taught to memorize a sequence of star risings, each one leading to the next like a breadcrumb trail made of photons. You chant them softly now under your breath. Star of the East rises over fish hook. Follow the hook to the rising turtle. Beyond the turtle land sleeps under shadow. You repeat it 3 times. Not because it changes anything, but because repetition builds memory, and memory is the only map you've got. The canoe rocks slightly as you shift your weight. You lay your head back against the curve of the hull and let your eyes unfocus. Above the stars don't judge, they just keep time. And as you drift, body slack, eyes heavy, you smile just a little. The sky clock ticks on, and you impossibly beautifully, you are right on time. The soft splash of something just beneath the surface stirs you, but you don't move. You're not alone out here, not really. The sea is alive, and tonight it's whispering gossip through fins and feathers. You blink slowly, shift your head and listen. Not with your ears this time, but with your whole body. Because when you're this far from land, fish and birds are the chatterboxes of the ocean highway. They don't lie, they don't overthink. They just follow food warmth and instinct, which makes them some of the most honest navigational allies you've got. You hear the chirrupy warble of a tern and tilt your head. Still too dark to see clearly, but the sound gives it away. That's a naughty tern. Black feather, sharp beak, and just territorial enough to dive bomb a canoe if it drifts too close to its home. And home means land. Land that's close enough for a bird to visit at night and return by dawn. Birds don't fly randomly, especially not seabirds. During the day, they hunt in purposeful arcs from their roosting spots, and at night, many return to perch. So if you spot them early before the horizon even hints at light, you can infer a direction. You mentally mark where the sound came from, just a few degrees off port. Adjust your course. Tiny correction. You're listening to your map flap its wings. Historians still argue whether this kind of bird tracking was methodical science or just folklore. But frankly, it works either way. You were taught to observe bird flight like reading a weather app. Speed, height, direction, time of day, all clues. And here's the trick. No one tells you if the bird is fat, it's coming from the hunt. If it's sleek and hungry, it's heading towards something, like your dinner plans. You chuckle softly. It's not a joke that lands well with everyone, but it's yours. And out here, humor is one of the few things that can outfloat fear. Fish offer clues too, but they're quieter about it. Less dramatic. A dart of silver under the hull means the current's strong. A flurry of leaping needlefish. You're approaching shallow water. And flying fish. Oh, the drama queens of the sea, they're the ones who practically throw themselves into your boat when you're near certain reefs. It's not subtle, it's dinner with a side of direction. You lean over the side of the canoe now, letting your fingers dangle just beneath the surface. It's cooler than it was hours ago, and there a slight tug of current pulling west. You taste the water without thinking. Still salty, but there's a faint difference. A softness. It's not just ocean anymore. It's been flavored by proximity. Somewhere nearby, an island runoff has bled into the current, mixing freshwater traces with salt. You taste land before you see it. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some navigators were said to have been trained to detect different types of plankton blooms by smell alone. Apparently, the chemical signals in the air change slightly when certain blooms are present, often near islands, like oceanic perfume. You sit up a bit straighter. The birds are getting louder now. They're not circling, not yet, but you spot two silhouettes gliding in wide loops just above the waterline. Always a good sign. You track their arcs. Broad at first, narrowing, a tightening spiral. Your heart does a slow somersault. Somewhere ahead, land waits. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It lets its messengers do the work. You return to the paddle, slow and even strokes. You adjust your posture, just slightly shifting the angle of your approach. Maybe a 2-degree lean into starboard. The difference between missing an atoll by a mile or threading it clean. And just when you're settling into rhythm, the water shifts. Not the surface, but the movement beneath. A lazy churn. Something big, maybe a school of jacks or tuna riding a feeding current. Maybe even something larger. You hope it's not a shark, though. Honestly, sharks aren't the villains they're made out to be. They're just very punctual. You glance up and spot the birds again, closer now. And then just for a heartbeat, one of them dips sharply, skimming the water with its beak. That's not just feeding behavior, that's confirmation. Your stomach flips not with fear, but with the thrill of validation. The signs are lining up. The stars led you here. The birds confirm it. The fish haven't contradicted you, and now even the water carries that quiet promise of proximity. You feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the subtle tilt of the outrigger. The sea isn't just a highway anymore, it's a funnel. You're being drawn in, and yet you stay calm, because emotion throws off perception. Excitement feels like wind, fear feels like current, but you know the difference. A soft breeze brushes your neck, lifting a strand of hair. It carries something new, something faint but unmistakable. The scent of earth, soil, maybe moldy coconut husk. Something not salt. That more than the birds or the fish gets you. You smile again despite yourself. The canoe's creaks have settled into a more deliberate rhythm now, like it too senses what's coming. In the distance, there's still nothing visible. No outline of palm fronds, no shadow of volcanic cliffs. Just the slow approach of something solid hiding behind the horizon's curve. But you're sure, completely sure, you don't need to see it, you've already read it. And as you breathe deeply, letting the sky fade a little behind your lashes, you know this truth. The ocean talks constantly. Most people just don't know how to listen. The ocean hums beneath your canoe like a purring cat the size of a continent. You sit quietly now, letting your thoughts dissolve as the canoe glides forward. Not pulled, not pushed, but invited. You felt this sensation before, just once or twice, the moment where the sea accepts your presence like a host, finally nodding and saying, "All right, come in." And then your mind begins to chant, not in prayer, but in map. You don't carry a parchment map with inky lines or compass roses. You carry a map in your mouth, one that your ancestors sang to you before you could walk. It starts low in your throat, barely above a whisper. From rising turtle to mother wave. Follow reef breath to shadow cave. Each line corresponds to a navigational point. A memory island, a reef shape, a current. You chant not for entertainment, but for direction. This is how you know the ocean. Historians still debate whether these story maps were literal or metaphorical, but they were functional, no question. Every major voyage was mapped in songs with repeated refrains that marked transitions, one verse for every island group, another. For swell patterns, another for what stars to watch when clouds roll in. It's like Google Maps if it rhymed and could only be updated through generational storytelling. Your chant is old, maybe 1,000 years. You didn't write it, but it's in you. Every pause between lines allows you to assess your surroundings. That sudden wind shift, it lines up with the verse about two spirits dancing near broken coral. That tells you there's likely a V-shaped reef ahead. That means back off your paddle rhythm, steer wide. Easy, quiet, smooth. It's not just about what you remember. It's about how deeply you've internalized it. The best navigators don't think about the chant, they become it. And the map doesn't stay the same. It evolves. When your grandfather added a verse about a new current that started appearing in his later years, no one argued. They just adjusted. The map expanded like a living thing. Because out here, the sea doesn't honor permanence. It honors attention. You hum another verse, this one slower. Past the cloudbone ridge, feel swell speak twice, turn when bird cry slices sky like ice. That line always gave you chills. Not because of its beauty, though it is beautiful, but because of its specificity. You've felt that moment. When the swell splits strangely and birds scream low in tandem. It's always just before reaching a narrow pass in a reef. A quirky truth in some cultures, young navigators would sleep with a shell pressed against their chest to learn how to feel waves through vibration, like training to hear with your ribs. One wrong swell and you miss the reef entrance. One missed beat and you slam your canoe into coral teeth. You tap your chest lightly now, not superstition, just habit. You feel the movement. It pulses left to right. That's not typical. That means cross-swell interference. There's a barrier ahead. Could be a reef. Could be an island with a wide lagoon. Either way, your chant confirms it. You murmur the next line. Drift not blind at mother's gate. She hides her shore with whispered bait. The ocean is patient, but also cunning. It will lure you with stillness and then snap. So you watch and you sing. And the map unwinds itself one phrase at a time like a rope pulled gently through your fingers. You've never written any of this down. Nobody has. And honestly, if you did, it would make no sense. It would just look like poetry. But it's not. It's precision. A linguistic net for catching direction. And you're not alone in this. Every island group has their own chant maps. Some are fierce, full of battle cries and storm warnings. Others are gentle, laced with metaphors about sea turtles and sleeping gods. But all of them do the same thing. They remind you where you are even when nothing else does. There's a moment now, small but definite, where your chant syncs perfectly with the motion of your canoe. You say bone back swell and the hull creaks. You whisper turn to bird cry and you hear a distant wing beat. It's enough to make your skin prickle. You're in the story. You are the story. The stars are still with you, scattered across the black like powdered sugar. But it's the story map that holds your focus now. You don't need to look up constantly. You've internalized the tempo. You know when the turtle star should rise. You know when the reef verse should start. You're reciting geography, not guessing. Some skeptics say this is memory theater, not navigation. But skeptics don't sail. They lecture, you sail. Your legs ache slightly now. A dull pull at the knees from hours of posture. You shift again. The outrigger adjusts with you. You whisper a line of thanks not to a god necessarily, but to the chant itself. To the fact that it keeps you grounded when nothing around you is actually grounded. You glance again at the horizon. Still no land, but you feel it. The chant told you so. Sky tooth ends when stars collide, lagoon dreams in morning stride. That's the last verse, the one that means landfall soon. Not now, but soon. And so you sing it once more quieter this time like a lullaby. Not because you need reminding, but because the ocean might be listening too. The canoe moves differently now, not faster, not slower, just differently. Like it's sliding along something that's no longer entirely water. You sense it in your spine before your eyes confirm it. The ocean swell so steady, so trustworthy, has changed its rhythm. You lean forward and press your palm flat against the hull. There. A subtle, almost undetectable rise, then a drop. Then another rise, but this one doesn't crest, it just lingers long and lazy. You found a wave that doesn't die. Not a surface wave. Not the kind that crashes on beaches or breaks against coral. This one is deep, big, old. It stretches across hundreds of miles, born from some long-forgotten storm or a pressure system you'll never meet. And yet here it is under your canoe, lifting you gently like a sigh every few minutes. You smile, you've read about this swell, heard stories, and now you feel it. This isn't just a swell, it's a memory. The ocean remembering something from far away. You lie back a little, eyes half closed, letting the rise and fall rock your senses. There's no splash, no froth. Just a steady underwater drumbeat that moves with too much dignity to break. Historians still argue whether early navigators could consciously track these deep ocean swells over long distances. But the best ones, they say, could feel the pattern while sleeping, adjusting course in their dreams, waking only to shift the paddle with a sleepy arm. You're not quite that good. But tonight you feel close. You let your body lean into the swell's rhythm. It comes from your back left, maybe 10 degrees off. That means the storm that birthed it is days, maybe weeks away in that direction. But more importantly, it's consistent. This wave won't stop, not for hundreds of miles. And if you can hold your course alongside it, you'll stay on a stable, predictable path. Navigators call this reading the bones of the sea. It sounds dramatic, and it is, because these aren't waves you can see. You have to feel them, not just with your body, but with the canoe itself. The hull is your sensor, your translator. A quirky bit you remember from your uncle, some elders believe that if you lay still and silent long enough, the canoe would teach you the swell's language. That sounds mystical. But tonight, lying in this slight cradle of water, you almost believe it. You close your eyes and count. 1, 2, slight rise. 3, 4, subtle shift left. You count again this time, matching the timing with your breath. After a few cycles, you can predict the lift before it happens. You paddle accordingly, light on one side, pause 2 strokes on the other, then rest. You're no longer steering by stars or birds, you're steering by pulse. And here's the magic. This deep wave, this ghostly ribbon of energy runs parallel to your story map chant. You remembered a line just an hour ago? Follow mother's backbone where no sea sleeps. That's this, the backbone. The part of the ocean that doesn't ripple or break, but holds its shape across time and weather. You don't just follow it, you ride it. A few feet ahead, the outrigger dips gently, then bobs back up. You feel the faint resistance in the arm lashings. The wave's angle is pressing slightly harder now, maybe a 1 degree change. It doesn't seem like much, but out here that's everything. Over the course of a night, 1 degree off can send you 40 miles off course. You adjust, not with drama, just a small lean of your shoulder. The canoe shifts with you, accepting the correction like a dance partner who already knows the next step. You hum again, not the chant this time, but a loose melody your grandmother used when she was testing for swell angles. A droning, tuneless sound, the kind that stays in your throat and buzzes in your chest. It's not musical, but it helps you focus, helps you sync with the sea. Somewhere far off you hear a splash, a dolphin maybe, or a marlin breaching. But you don't check. The swell is still your priority. It won't wait. It won't stop. A light breeze brushes your cheek, and then oddly something shifts in the temperature. The air to your right feels cooler, barely, but noticeably. You reach out, nothing visible, no fog, no mist, just cooler air. That can mean a wind pocket being funneled around an island's edge, or the top edge of a larger weather system. You match that information to the wave direction, the match is perfect. If the cool air continues, landfall could be within a day. You whisper that to yourself. One more day, it doesn't sound real, but you trust it. A quick bit of history slides into your thoughts when Europeans first encountered Polynesian canoes at sea. They were baffled by the lack of instruments. "Where is your compass?" they asked. And the answer was always some version of, "You're standing in it." Because the canoe, the chant, the swell, the sky, all of it is the compass. You let the next rise lift your back. You breathe with it. And suddenly it feels like the swell is less a tool, more a friend. Like a slow-moving whale that's letting you ride along. You place your palm on the wood again and whisper, "Thank you." Not because you're being poetic, but because you actually feel grateful. This wave, this invisible creature has carried you for hours without protest. That deserves thanks. You don't know how much longer the swell will last. Maybe it goes all the way to the reef. Maybe it will vanish in the early hours like a dream. But for now it's here. And it's steady, and you're with it. One more deep breath, one more gentle stroke of the paddle. And the wave that doesn't die keeps you on course. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the darkness is thinner now. The stars have started to pale like stage lights dimming after the final act. You blink against the gentle graying of the horizon and realize how long you've been staring without really seeing. Your eyes ache not from strain, but from the quiet demand of constant watching. Navigators don't get to blink much, and you've learned that lesson the salty way. Salt crusts the edges of your lashes blown in by hours of sea spray and mist. It dries there in delicate flakes like sea frost. If you blink too hard, your lashes stick. If you blink too little, your eyes burn. Either way, the ocean wins. You lift a hand to gently rub your brow as though that'll stop the sting. It doesn't. Still, you keep your gaze steady, because the next few hours are crucial. The sky is shifting rapidly now. The stars you've used all night are dipping, melting into daylight. Your main tools are leaving the stage, and they won't be back for another 12 hours. So whatever you've learned tonight, every pattern, every bird call, every swell it needs to hold. Until then, your best instrument is your face, your eyes, your skin, your cheeks, your nose. They all read the weather, read the light, read the sea. And right now, your eyes lock on something barely perceptible just above the horizon. It might be nothing, a smudge, a cloud, a lie. But it might also be land. Historians still argue whether ancient navigators could truly spot islands over the curve of the Earth. Technically, the human eye can only see a few dozen miles to the horizon, especially from the low height of a canoe. But what you see now isn't island, it's sign. A towering cloud formation, too vertical, too puffy, like a thunderhead trying to impersonate a volcano. You've seen this before, island cloud, they call it. It forms when sun-heated land sends warm air upward, condensing moisture faster than the surrounding sea. It's a giveaway, a cheat code in nature's software, and it hovers loyally over even the smallest atoll. You don't blink. Not now. That cloud will drift with the morning breeze soon, and you need to be sure. You shade your eyes with your palm and track it. It holds. You grin. Now your focus shifts again lower to the surface of the sea. You're watching for seabirds of the sky. No, not birds. Just the shadows they cast when they circle high above. You won't see the birds until they swoop, but you can catch their shadows. Just small flickers on the water, like ghosts chasing fish. And there it is. A flutter. Then another. Your heart knocks once against your ribs. You almost blink, but you don't. Instead, you squint harder, tracking the movement. It's fast, wide arcs, then tighter circles. The birds have started to turn. They're not just flying, they're pointing. And this is where it gets fun. Because you're exhausted, your eyes are gritty, your head is foggy. But this is exactly when you need them most. You stare into the lightning horizon and your body does something odd, it narrows. Not literally, but in focus. Everything outside your gaze fades. The sea, the sky, even the canoe. Your entire consciousness becomes a thin, sharpened tunnel of vision. You're trying to catch movement before the light fully reveals it. You're racing daylight. A quick quirky detail comes to mind. Some seasoned navigators were said to use the reflection of their own pupils in the water to judge angles, like a backup mirror. It sounds absurd, but hey, if it works, it works. You give it a try leaning over the side and peering at your own warped reflection. You can't make anything useful out. But you laugh anyway. It's a weird comfort. You sit up straighter now, blinking finally. The salt flakes crackle off like sand. You rub your cheeks, then return your gaze to the cloud. Still there, unmoving. That's not a sky cloud, that's your marker. Still there's no room for pride yet. Because now the sun's edge breaks the ocean line and it hits your eyes like a slap. You wince, shoulders hunching. It's too bright. Your pupils scramble to adjust. And in that blinding moment, you do blink. Hard, twice. Maybe 3 times. And just like that, the cloud is gone. Not vanished, just faded into the brightness. That's what the sun does out here. It hides your signs in plain sight. You wait, blinking again, eyes stinging until the light softens into gold instead of white. Then you look again, and there it is. Low. Just a line the faintest darker blue against the lighter sea. You wouldn't even call it land yet, it looks like a mistake. But your eyes don't lie. You exhale. Every watchful hour of the night led to this. Every moment you didn't blink, didn't doze, didn't let your mind wander too far. They all brought you here. That tiny smudge of blue, it's proof. Not just that you're close, but that your training works. That your body, your brain, your boat, and the sky are still part of the same conversation. Navigators don't blink, not because they're stubborn, but because every second matters. The sea doesn't pause for you to refocus. And now finally you let your gaze rest, just for a minute. You close your eyes not out of weakness, but out of peace. You've seen what you needed to see. The island will wait, it's not going anywhere. And for once, neither are you. Your stomach grumbles. Not dramatically, just enough to remind you that time is a thing and that paddling for hours through open sea is a full body workout with no snack breaks. You glance at the tiny bundle tucked under the seat plank. Half a roasted breadfruit wrapped in banana leaf, slightly bruised. Not the most thrilling menu, but it's something. You nibble a corner. It's dry, a little smoky. Honestly, not bad. But it won't last you the day, and you know better than to eat out of boredom. You chew slowly, letting the bland starch work its way through your system like an edible hourglass. You're used to this kind of hunger, not just physical, but anticipatory. When you're on the ocean, food is timing. Energy becomes rationed instinctively like a heartbeat slowing to conserve power. Out here, calories matter. But what matters even more is when you use them. You lean back and exhale slowly. Your body aches, sure, but it's a quiet, productive kind of ache. You've learned to befriend it, just like you've learned to make peace with fasting. Historians still argue whether Pacific navigators carried enough provisions for multi-week voyages or if they depended more on catching food along the way. The answer? Probably both. You brought what you could carry, and you hunted what you couldn't. You glance into the water now, watching for the silver flash of bait fish. Nothing yet. The sea's too quiet this morning. You could toss a line if you wanted, but the stillness tells you not to waste the energy just yet. The fish aren't here. But you remember a trick your cousin taught you? If your breath smells overly sweet when you exhale through your nose, it means you're starting to burn muscle instead of food. You check. Nothing too alarming. Still, it's a gentle tap on the shoulder from your metabolism. Hey, buddy, let's not get cocky. Your water is down to a single gourd wrapped in woven palm leaves to keep it shaded. It's warm now, but still drinkable. You tilt it slightly, letting a sip trickle over your tongue. Not too much. You ration the liquid like you do the stars, slowly with care. A quirky bit you remember: some ancient voyagers believed drinking too much fresh water at sea would confuse the stomach, especially if you weren't sweating. They'd wait for their pores to open in the heat before taking a real drink. It sounds like superstition, but maybe it was just wisdom with a weird costume. You stretch your legs one at a time, careful not to shift your balance too far to either side. The outrigger groans in reply but stays steady. You thank it again. That thing has saved your neck more times than you can count. And now your thoughts drift to coconuts. Sweet, life-saving coconuts. You'd kill for one right now. The problem is they don't grow on the ocean. You laugh softly. That's the cruel thing about being this close to land. Your brain starts reminding you of everything you could be eating if you were just 50 paddles closer to a beach, like grilled fish, or papaya with lime, or taro soaked in coconut cream, or literally anything that doesn't taste like burnt starch and seawater. You shake your head. Fantasy food is dangerous. It makes you sloppy. Instead, you run through your checklist. What do you need most right now? Not food. Not yet. Not water. You've got just enough. Know what you really need is focus, because the final approach to land is deceptive. It looks easy, but it's a maze. You remember the story of the apprentice who spotted land on his first solo voyage and paddled straight toward it, only to crash full speed into a reef wall hiding just under the surface. The canoe split. He swam for shore and survived. But his pride didn't. For years afterward, the elders called him Shark's Canoe. So no, you don't aim straight for that silhouette on the horizon. You circle, observe, wait. And while you wait, the hunger sharpens again. It's not terrible, but it's there. You let it sit with you like a quiet passenger. You remind yourself that your ancestors went days, sometimes weeks, without a full meal at sea. And they were fine. Maybe not cheerful, but fine. There's an old line from a chant you remember, empty belly, steady hand, which sounds poetic, but it's also tactical. A full stomach slows you down. A hungry stomach makes you deliberate. Besides, when you're not eating, you're paying attention. You're watching the color of the water shift from navy blue to royal blue to hints of turquoise. That gradient means you're getting close to a shelf, maybe even the edge of a lagoon. You tuck that knowledge away. You glance at your breadfruit bundle again. Still enough for another nibble. But you don't touch it. Not yet. You'll need it later. You always need it later. Instead, you stretch again, slow and careful. Your body creaks but still responds. You lean over the side and scoop up a handful of seawater, not to drink, but to splash over your arms and neck. It's a jolt, but it clears the haze from your head. It wakes up your skin, reminds your brain, we're still here, still moving, still okay. You settle back into your spot, hands on the paddle, eyes ahead. You're not full, you're not comfortable, but you're alive. And you're getting closer. And in this vast blue nothingness that's more than enough. You were 10 the first time someone told you to watch the clouds like they owed you money. That was your grandfather's version of pay attention to the weather. He had a voice like gravel wrapped in palm bark, and he squinted all the time whether it was sunny, rainy, or night. You thought it was just an old man thing, but it wasn't. It was training. You're squinting now without even realizing it. The clouds overhead aren't stormy, not yet. But they've changed shape in the last hour. What was once a lazy, stretched smear of white has thickened into something rounder, denser. A low-bellied formation that could either mean afternoon rain or just a passing tantrum from the atmosphere. You've learned not to panic at the first sign. You just stare hard. At 10 years old, you learned that not all clouds are created equal. Some tell you stories, some tell you lies, but most just want to be noticed. So you notice them. The biggest one now, a slow-moving cauliflower of vapor, starts to drift eastward. That's your first clue. If the high clouds are moving east while the low winds are heading west, you've got an inversion on your hands. That means weather is about to get weird. Not dangerous necessarily, just unpredictable. And if there's one thing you don't want during a final landfall approach, it's unpredictability. Historians still debate whether traditional navigators had specific names for cloud types the way modern meteorologists do. What we do know is that navigators had classifications, at least 5, maybe more, for how clouds behaved, not just how they looked. Clouds that run, clouds that sleep, clouds that wrap, clouds that hammer, and clouds that hide. You're dealing with a wrap cloud now. One that coils around distant sky like it's trying to trap something. You shade your eyes and look again. The coil is tightening. You mutter a line you once heard your aunt say, "If the sky folds, so must your thoughts," meaning basically time to stay flexible. Whatever you expected from the next few hours, toss it. Stay alert. But the boy who stared at clouds, he's still in there, inside you. Back then, you'd lie on your back in the grass and imagine dragons in the cumulus, or faces in the cirrus. Now, lying in your canoe, you don't imagine. You interpret. A thin wedge of cloud. That's not a sword, it's a wind shear. That soft anvil-shaped thunderhead in the distance. It's not a mushroom, it's a sign to reef the sail if you had one. You stare longer. The light has shifted again, slightly cooler. The sun is now filtered through that veiled cloud layer, turning the ocean into mercury. Smooth, reflective, unreadable. You don't like that. When the sun can't throw shadows, you lose one of your best depth cues. A reef could be 30 feet away and look like open water. So you stare harder. You've trained for this. You've squinted for this. There's a movement now, small but distinct on the right edge of the cloud bank. A faint downward drift like someone pouring ink into water from the sky. Rain, not heavy but distant. You whisper the phrase out loud, "Cloud touch weeping," your grandfather's words. It means the island is under rainfall, which also means it's right there. Maybe hidden. Maybe just out of view. But close. You reach for your paddle and steer slightly south. Not a big adjustment, just enough to follow the cloud's exhale. A quirky memory hits you. One of the older navigators in your village claimed he could smell rain coming from 50 miles away. You thought he was lying. But then one day at the edge of a reef, he said, "Tomorrow your back will be soaked by dawn." Sure enough, it rained at sunrise. Since then, you've kept your nose a little more involved in the process. Right now, the air does smell different. Not sharp, but rich, full, like the sky is pregnant with water. You nod to yourself. It's coming. You glance back at the main cloud. It's folding in again, drawing heat upward into its belly. That's the moment to watch for. That's when the wind shifts and the surface of the ocean answers back. You wait. Then you feel it. A cool rush across your cheek. The first gust. It smells of minerals and old trees, island air. You grin, teeth dry and salty. The boy who stared at clouds. He was paying attention. He's still got it. The sea starts to ripple now, disturbed by the shift in pressure. You brace with your paddle, leaning into the new rhythm. The canoe rocks slightly, then steadies. You're still in control. And just as you hoped, the thick part of the cloud begins to break like someone tugging open a curtain. A shaft of light spills through, revealing a faint outline. Not much, just a bump in the horizon. But you recognize the shape. That's not a cloud, that's land. And this time it's not pretending. The clouds didn't just tell you where, they told you when. Now! You exhale long and slow, your shoulders drop. You ease the paddle into the water again, every stroke steady and sure. The boy who stared at clouds. He grew up, but he never stopped looking. The sun climbs higher, casting long slashes of gold across the water, and you start to feel the heat press down on your skin like a thick, invisible palm. It doesn't sizzle, not yet, but it's warning you. This is the part of the day where the ocean starts playing tricks. You squint again. That distant land you thought you saw earlier still there, but fuzzier. The heat rising off the surface distorts the horizon like a mirage trying to escape your gaze. You rub your eyes, trying to will the view back into focus. Here's the thing: you've done everything right so far. You've tracked stars, followed birds, felt the swell, sang the chant. But now you've entered the most dangerous phase of the journey. You're almost there. And that's exactly when people get sloppy. This is the moment when your brain tells you it's safe to relax. But the ocean is still watching, still testing, still just as willing to chew your canoe in half as it was yesterday. You lean into the paddle and whisper the rule drilled into your bones. Sail blind with confidence or don't sail at all. The phrase sounds paradoxical, and that's the point. Because right now you're technically blind. The light flattens everything. The heat blurs everything. Even the birds have vanished, probably off nesting or preening or arguing over fish scraps. But you keep moving forward. Historians still argue whether this final visualless stretch was pure guesswork for early navigators or some heightened sixth sense. But it's not either or, it's muscle memory, it's trust. You're not guessing, you're remembering. You dig deep into your chant again, but this time you don't sing it. You think it. Past the driftbone path where water folds, trust the swell when vision scolds. You repeat it in your mind, syncing the lines with your paddling strokes. You've passed the driftbone path. You felt it last night in the subtle shift of wave direction. And now the water is folding. Not dramatically, just enough to feel the energy bend inward like you're entering a basin. You smile despite the glare. You know what that means. You're inside the shadow circle. That's what your elders called it. The invisible boundary around an island where light changes, sounds bounce differently, and currents hesitate. It's not on any map, but it's real. You feel it now. You stop paddling just for a moment. Let the canoe glide. Listen. Silence. Then there it is. A subtle echo of your own movement. A reflection of sound that can only happen near land. You tap the paddle once on the side of the canoe. Took. The echo comes back faint but firm. You're close, but you still can't see a thing clearly. A quirky tidbit slides into your memory some navigators used to close one eye for extended stretches during the final approach. Not because it helped with visibility, but so they could keep one eye fully dark adapted. Then, if they needed to spot a reef shadow or underwater channel, they could just swap eyes and see more contrast. Pirates might have used eye patches for the same reason. Go figure. You close one eye now, just to try it. The world tilts slightly, but the shadow of land ahead gets crisper. The light doesn't bite so hard. You focus on that blurry shape, and then you see it. A line. A ripple in the edge of blue, not a wave. A reef, shallow water. You don't hear it yet, but you feel it. You mutter 3 strokes to tilt 2 to slow, the pattern you practiced in calmer waters. You start adjusting your angle. The outrigger drags just slightly now, which is good. It'll help you balance against any incoming swell. Then, like an old friend clearing their throat, the ocean speaks. Hush! Crackle, hush! It's soft, but it's there. The sound of water dragging across coral teeth. A reef, the welcome mat of the island and its gatekeeper. You don't head straight for it. That would be suicide. You aim slightly north, planning to approach at an angle, looking for the blue-green water that suggests a safe pass. The kind of pass you could slip through without ending up as canoe confetti. But there's no guarantee you'll find it today. Sometimes the opening plays shy. You have to circle, watch, wait for the tide to help, or the wind to shift, or just for luck to feel generous. You murmur another chant line. Blind but bold in reef, we trust circle, thrice return or bust, which is a polite way of saying if you can't find the pass, don't force it. Go around, try again. No shame in surviving. You tap the paddle lightly. Once, twice, thrice. A rhythm. You're telling the canoe what to expect. You're telling yourself to breathe. The sky brightens again, but now it's different. Less glare. The sun has moved behind a soft veil of cloud, just enough to let you see color again. And there it is, a faint lighter blue cut between two deeper streaks. The water there moves faster, smoother. That's the pass. That's your window. You steady the canoe and aim straight into it. You still can't see what's beneath. You're sailing blind, yes, but with confidence. Because this moment more than any other is when belief matters. Not mystical belief, but trust in your process, in your training, in your boat, in yourself. You push forward, not fast, not timid, just steady. The pass awaits. Your breath catches not from fear exactly, but from sheer concentration. You're inside the pass now. That rare, narrow gap in the reef where deep ocean water spills into shallow island lagoons. It's not dramatic. There's no crashing wall of surf or jagged rocks waiting to smash your canoe. No sea monsters, just a slow, sly shift in the sea's personality. You watch the water like a hawk. It turns a lighter shade of blue, almost teal. Beautiful, yes, but also dangerous. Because this is where the ocean hides its teeth. You remember the warning shadows that don't move are not your friends. And that's exactly what you're looking for now. Dark patches that stay put while everything else flows. Floating shadows drift. Anchored shadows bite. You squint. There off to your right. A smooth, almond-shaped patch of darkness. Too still. Too symmetrical. Coral head? The kind that could split your canoe open like a banana peel. You steer left. No panic, just a few strokes. The outrigger lifts ever so slightly as you glide past. Another shadow longer this time stretched like a lazy snake. A reef finger. Still dangerous, but at least it's not pretending to be something it's not. You angle around it too. The lagoon ahead begins to show itself not in detail, not yet, but in texture. The water calms, the swells fade, and for the first time in days, your canoe begins to move without resistance. It's like someone turned off the treadmill. But this is where things can get tricky. Historians still argue whether Pacific Islanders could spot submerged reefs from miles away, or whether they relied solely on trial and error. What's clear is that they knew how to read light like a book. You're doing it now, watching how the sun reflects off the surface at different angles. A silvery shimmer means depth. A dull matte patch usually means something lurking underneath. A quirky trick you recall in some traditions, navigators would toss flower petals or dry leaves onto the water to check current direction inside a lagoon. The way they floated or didn't help to determine eddies, hidden rocks, and safe anchoring spots. You don't have flowers today, but you do have a palm frond tucked under the lashings. You pluck it free and toss it into the water. It spins once, then drifts gently left. A hidden current. Not strong, but enough to pull you toward the reef edge if you're careless. You correct again this time, feathering your paddle in shallow strokes, barely disturbing the surface. You're moving like a whisper now, like someone sneaking into a library of water. The air smells different here, less salty, more green. You inhale deeply, catching the faint scent of pandanus, maybe even wet stone. Your nose knows land is close. Your ears, too. You hear a distant thump waves hitting shore. It's rhythmic, grounded. After days of sea hiss and slap, it sounds domestic. And then just ahead, a sudden shape rises from the edge of your vision. Not a shadow, not a bird. An actual rock. You blink just once this time to be sure. It's real. The first solid thing you've seen in days. You steer toward it slowly, reverently. Your shoulders ease back. You're gliding now. And still, you keep looking for those static shadows. Because this close to safety is exactly where disaster likes to wait. You spot one more reef head barely below the surface. It's positioned like a final test. The water above it is glassy, still deceptive. If you weren't trained, you'd head right for it. But you're trained. You ease around it like you're avoiding eye contact with an old rival. The canoe tilts, then rights itself. The outrigger dips. The shadow passes under and behind you. And then clarity. The lagoon opens. Shallow water stretches ahead the color of polished turquoise. The bottom is visible now, sand coral, maybe a few darting fish. You sit back, let the paddle rest across your knees and drift. This is what success feels like, not a shout, not a celebration. Just the soft hush of shallow water beneath you and the warmth of land ahead. A smile creeps across your face. You made it. But you also remember what your great-aunt said the first time you came back from a voyage. Don't cheer until you've walked on dry sand. Reef spirits have long arms. So you stay quiet, you keep your eyes open. Even here in the calm, you keep looking. You trust but verify because shadows betray the day. But today you're not betrayed, you're blessed. And as the reef slips behind you and the inner water embraces your canoe, you whisper a quiet thanks not to the island, but to the shadows. They made you careful. They made you better. They let you through. You slide farther into the lagoon, the water now so clear it's like paddling across liquid glass. You can see the bottom, plainly white sand streaked with darker patches of coral and seagrass. Tiny fish dart away from your shadow, moving like sparks in the shallows. You've entered a different world. It hums quieter. The lagoon doesn't roar like the open sea, it breathes. It waits. This is the moment where most navigators feel the tension ease, where the ocean's voice drops from a scream to a whisper. But you stay alert, because this is where everything you think you know can go sideways. There's a story you heard once. A man landed safely in a lagoon just like you. Crystal water, calm breeze, everything perfect. He smiled, stood to stretch. And a second later, a hidden current took the outrigger out from under him. Canoe flipped. Supplies lost. He had to swim 3 hours dragging his gear in his teeth while a shark followed just behind. That's why you don't relax yet. You paddle slowly now, tracing a path toward the inner beach. The island ahead rises gently. No cliffs or volcanoes here, just a low forested mass with palms swaying at the edges like gossiping uncles. And then you spot it. A shape just under the surface, pale and circular. You lean over. A turtle. Big old with algae on its shell and the kind of slow movement that says I've seen more landings than you've had breakfasts. It glides beneath your canoe, utterly unfazed by your presence. You whisper thanks. Not because you expect the turtle to respond, but because seeing one during landfall is considered a good omen. A quiet nod from the ocean that you're welcome here. Historians still argue whether turtles were seen as navigational helpers or simply spiritual symbols. But among your people, they were both. Follow a turtle and you'll usually find land. Not because the turtle is magic, but because it knows where the good currents go. This one doesn't want to be followed. It flicks its flippers and disappears into the coral. You smile and let it go. Now comes the next challenge, choosing where to land. It's not as simple as picking the closest beach. You scan the shoreline looking for signs where the waves break softly, where the sand is smooth, where driftwood piles high. That's where the tide deposits things. That's where the landing will be kind. You spot such a spot not too far. You shift your weight, guide the canoe gently, slow as breathing. Every paddle stroke is a negotiation with gravity. The outrigger dips once more, then rights itself. And just before the bow kisses the shallows, you stop. Not out of hesitation, out of respect. This is your arrival moment. And you treat it like entering someone's home. You whisper the traditional line, "The ocean brings me, the island may keep me." It's old, and it's enough. Then you push forward the last few feet. The hull scrapes sand, a delicate sound like fingernails on fabric. You step out 1 foot first, then the other. The sand is warm and oddly soft, almost too soft, like your feet forgot what solid ground feels like. And then your knees wobble. You laugh. You're not injured, just readjusting. The earth doesn't move like the sea, and after so long afloat, your body has to remember how to trust stillness. The canoe rocks gently behind you. You secure it with a palm cord wrapped around a driftwood root. Then you walk a few steps farther onto dry sand. Only then do you exhale fully. You've made it. A quirky tradition from one island group comes to mind. They used to scatter powdered coral at the landing site of a successful voyage, then press their feet into it like an ancient version of a red carpet. Not for vanity, for memory. A mark left in gratitude. You don't have coral powder, but you press your heel into the sand all the same. Then you walk slowly toward the edge of the trees where shade flickers and the scent of damp earth finally overtakes the salt. But you pause because something glints in the corner of your eye. Behind you at the edge of the reef you see it. A wreck, old, weather-beaten. Just a canoe frame now bleached by sun and tide, half buried in coral rubble. You walk toward it, curiosity pulling you like a thread. You crouch and run your hand along its edge. The lashings are long gone, but the form is familiar. You know this shape. It didn't make it. You wonder about the person who built it, who sailed it. If they reached the same cloud-formed promise of land but missed the pass. If they made it to shore or didn't. If they sang the same chant you did. You stand quietly. Historians might say it's just debris, but you know better. This is memory. Wrecks aren't failures. They're lessons. The lucky turtle, the shifting shadows, the tricky reef. All of them reminded you how easily it could have been you. You look back once more at your canoe, still afloat, still whole, still waiting. Then you whisper a final thanks to the sea, to the land, and to the wreck. Because this time you didn't join it, you step into the shade. It's cooler under the palms and the earth feels damp, spongy in places, soft in others. Roots twist like lazy snakes across your path and the smell changes again. Salt gives way to loam, to flowers you can't name, to the faint scent of ash from somewhere deep in the trees. You pause. The air feels thicker here, as though the land itself is still deciding whether to accept you. But then you feel it, a gentle hum in your chest. Not sound exactly. More like memory vibrating just beneath your ribs. You've entered a space where the ancestors are close. You don't see anyone. Not yet. No footprints in the sand. No voices in the trees. Just the hush of branches swaying above you, birds arguing high in the canopy, and your own footsteps pressing into the dirt. You think of your grandmother, her voice, her hands, the way she'd close her eyes and listen during storms. She always said the wind brought messages if you were quiet long enough. Said that sometimes they speak through the rustling of trees or the pattern of raindrops on the roof, or even the way the fire crackled. You never really believed it until now, because right now you feel it. Not fear, not awe, just presence. You step around a twisted pandanus root and notice a small clearing. It's circular. The ground is flat, cleared of brush and stone. Someone once swept this clean, long ago probably, but the shape remains. And that's when you remember the dream. You had it months ago, maybe a year. You were standing on an island you didn't know, surrounded by trees that bent inwards like they were listening. Someone behind you whispered, "You've come far enough." You woke up cold and shaking. Historians still argue whether navigators dreamed their destinations, if dreams were considered part of the voyage or just wishful projections of exhausted minds. But in your culture, dreams aren't accidents. They're part of the map. A quirky belief your uncle once shared: if you dream of a journey 3 times, it means the journey is waiting for you. Not optional, not metaphorical. Waiting. And this clearing, this feels like that dream. You step to the center, lower yourself slowly to sit cross-legged and rest your palms on your knees. The earth is warm, not hot, not sticky, just warm enough to feel like someone else has been sitting here. You close your eyes. The forest creaks and hisses around you. The wind stirs the leaves. And then somewhere between sleep and waking, you feel the presence arrive. No footsteps, no voices, just the sense that you're not alone. You don't open your eyes. That's not how this works. You invite. So you speak not aloud, not in words, but in thought: "I'm listening." And they answer. Not with language, not even with images, just impressions. You feel a hand on your shoulder, though nothing touches you. You sense a face inches from your own, though no breath stirs your skin. You smell burnt coconut husk and salt and old sweat scents of voyages long gone. You feel seen. This is the part that no modern navigator can explain. No GPS, no sextant, no star chart can decode the hush of ancestral presence. But it's real. They're here. You think of your lineage not as a list of names, but as a chain of calloused hands, sunburned faces, quiet courage. People who left islands to find other islands. People who risked everything because the sea asked them to. Because dreams pulled them forward. You feel their approval now, not grand, not dramatic, just calm. They're not giving you instructions. They're reminding you that you're part of something bigger. That the ocean doesn't belong to you, you belong to it. And by making it here, you've honored them. You breathe deeply once, twice. Then, like mist lifting from the forest floor, the sensation fades. The presence thins. They haven't gone. They've just stepped back. You open your eyes. The trees are the same, the clearing is still, but you are different. You don't need to speak about this, not to anyone. This was for you. Still you whisper thank you. Not for guidance, for witnessing. You stand slowly, feeling your joints complain. The sun filters through the canopy, now soft and gold, and you realize how long you've been here. The day is slipping forward. Time, like tide, always moves. You step out of the clearing, back into the forest path. Your canoe waits on the beach. But you're not in a hurry. You've landed, yes, but you've also arrived. And for now, that's enough. You return to the beach quietly, brushing leaves from your shoulders, dust from your palms. The sand feels warmer now, sun-soaked and grainy between your toes, a far cry from the damp soil of the forest floor. Your canoe waits just where you left it, bobbing gently in the shallows, patient as a dog tied to a post. You crouch beside it, run a hand along the outrigger, check the lashings. All tight, all intact. Somehow it looks smaller now, humbled by the island's bulk behind you. It got you here. You nod at it in quiet thanks. Then, because the morning sun is heating fast and your water gourd is nearly empty, you do the next thing a navigator learns to do. You find something to drink. You scan the tree line again, more palms, more pandanus, more tangled undergrowth. Somewhere in there, water waits. But before you go, you glance up. Clouds drift lazily across the sky, now no threat in them. But what draws your eye isn't the white wisps overhead. It's the dark ones. The ones gathering just above the mountain slope behind the forest, still thin, still forming. There's moisture in them. Not storm clouds, just rainmakers. You squint and grin. Maybe this island likes you after all. You head back into the trees, this time with purpose. You search for the signs, certain ferns curling tighter than usual. The bark of trees slightly darker, the way leaf edges bead with condensation, all good indicators. You find a low patch of moss-covered stones and dig lightly with your fingers. Moisture, just a little. You clear a palm-sized depression and wait. Sure enough, after a minute, water begins to bead up from below, seeping into the bowl you've made. Not much, but enough to know you're close to a spring. And then rain. Not much at first. Just a spatter of drops across the leaves like the island tapping its fingers. Then a light patter on your shoulders. You lift your face. It's warm, almost silky. You open your mouth and let a few drops land on your tongue. They taste different. Not just because they're fresh, but because they're telling you something. Rain from the west is heavier, saltier, born of the sea, and laced with the breath of distant storms. Rain from the east is cooler, lighter, forest-fed. This rain, it's coming straight down. No wind, no tilt. That's inland rain. It means you're in the bowl of the island now, and the air is rising around you. You remember a chant? Rain falls sharp in foreign lands, but soft when you're already home. And this rain is soft. You collect it using a leaf broad, waxy, slightly curled. Nature's cup. You catch a few mouthfuls, drink slowly. Let it rinse the salt from your lips. The taste isn't just clean, it's directional. You once thought that was nonsense. But the longer you spent at sea, the more you started noticing it. Rain that came off the ocean always had a metallic edge. Rain that fell over land smelled green, earthy, like wet stone. Historians still argue whether ancient navigators truly used rain to guide them, or if it was just a poetic way to feel reassured. But you don't need to win a debate. You just need to know rain can tell you where you are. You sit beneath a broad breadfruit tree and let the rain soak into your hair. You're not cold, not even shivering. This isn't punishing rain. This is the kind that listens. A quirky old tale comes to mind, one that said if rain landed in your left palm first, it meant someone on another island was thinking about you. If it hit your right palm, it meant they were waiting for you. You check. Left hand. You chuckle. Well, someone might be thinking about you. Or maybe the rain just likes messing with sentimental people. Still, the thought warms you. You stay there for a long moment, letting the island wash over you. Not just the water, but the sound of it. Leaves tapping together, drops gathering, dripping, soaking into the soil. No waves, no birdsong. Just the lull of falling water like a lullaby hummed through trees. Eventually, the rain slows, then stops. The leaves shine, the forest glows. You stand, stretch, and step back toward the beach. Your arms and face damp, but your mind clear. The wind shifts slightly. Now it comes from the east, brushing the tops of the trees. That's new. You pause, face tilted. That direction wind from inland toward the sea means something. It means a weather system is shifting. The air is balancing itself. And then the question comes quiet and heavy. Do you stay? Or do you sail again? Not today, of course, but soon. You glance at the horizon now visible in every direction from the slope above the beach. You see the reef curve the sea open the faraway blue. You could leave again. You know the swell, you know the stars. You even know how this rain tastes. But you also know when not to move. So you crouch in the sand again next to your canoe and let your fingers trail through a puddle left by the rain. It reflects the clouds now breaking apart above. You watch them drift weightless and patient, and somewhere in the back of your mind you whisper the lines, "When the sky drinks and the sea listens, that is when you wait." So you wait. Not because you're lost, but because you're finally found. You stretch your legs out in the sand and let your body settle into the heat of the earth. The sun is back now, fully emerged from its curtain of rain clouds. It presses gently down, not scorching, but steady constant. A warm, calming weight. You lean back on your elbows and close your eyes. One foot rests in the sun, the other tucked in the shade of your canoe. You start to notice the contrast heat on one ankle, cool on the other. It's oddly comforting, like the island is letting you experience two worlds at once. One foot on fire, the other frozen. It's a strange feeling, but it tells you something more than temperature. It tells you where you are. Your people always said the body was more than flesh, it was an instrument. A compass, a sensor array, a finely tuned receiver of information, too subtle for the eyes or ears alone. And in this moment, you feel latitude not as a number on a chart, but as a sensation. The sun heats the northern half of your body faster than the southern. That means you're just below the equator. If you were farther south, the sun would strike from a different angle. If you were above it, your shadow would lean the other way. No instruments required, just legs, just skin. Historians still debate whether this kind of bodily awareness was taught systematically or if it developed naturally over generations of sea travel. But either way, it works. You feel it now clearly. Latitude measured by thigh sweat. It's not glamorous, but it's accurate. You stand and move into the shade of a palm, letting the shift in air cool your skin. The breeze comes steady now from the ocean's edge. You close your eyes and turn slowly, keeping your arms loose by your sides. The moment the breeze hits both cheeks equally, you pause. There, east. You open your eyes, reorienting to the forest behind you and the reef beyond. You could draw a map from just this moment, just this feeling, direction by goosebump. Not a bad system, really. A quirky training method you remember from your childhood elders would blindfold you and have you lie on the sand at midday. You had to tell which direction you were facing using only the sun's heat on your body. Fail, and you had to gather firewood for the evening. Succeed, and you got the last roasted banana. You got very good at telling which shoulder felt warmer. You shift your weight now, letting the wind tug at your shirt, then turn your face toward the sun. You breathe in deep. The salt is lighter here, softened by humidity filtered through wet trees. The kind of air that doesn't dry you out immediately. It clings gently. You walk a little farther down the shore, scanning the beach. The island curves here slightly inward, creating a shallow crescent. Good protection if you need to stay. You note it for later. Sheltered beaches mean gentler tides. Fewer predators, easier launches. You crouch again this time to press your hand against the sand. Still warm, not just from the sun, but from thermal retention. The kind that suggests volcanic rock beneath the soil. That's another clue. This isn't just any island, it's born of fire. That tracks with the water temperature you felt when you first landed, warmer than usual. There may be thermal vents nearby, possibly hot springs deeper inland. Now that's a welcome thought. You shift again and press your other hand into the wet part of the sand closer to the tide line. It's cool, not shockingly cold, but enough to make your wrist flinch. You hold both hands up, one pink with warmth, one pale from the chill. That's your body telling you something. Again, the day is aging, the tide is shifting, and so is the air. A subtle change brushes past your neck. Cooler wind, higher moisture content. Rain returning, no. Just the sea exhaling again. A rhythm like breathing. You start to time it, warm gusts followed by cool gusts in 5-minute waves. That's a sign of atmospheric layering, weather balancing itself. You sit back, legs stretched, one foot still catching sun, the other in shadow. And suddenly you remember a saying, the navigator never stops sailing even on land. Because this too is navigation. Reading light, reading temperature, reading your own skin like a weather chart. You aren't checking dials or satellite images, you're checking yourself. It's slower, yes, but it's quieter, and it leaves fewer blind spots. A bird calls from the treetops behind you, a long, warbling trill. You recognize the call. It's the same species that greeted you on your home island. That's comforting. It means this island shares an ecosystem, a rhythm, a sky. You're not far from home. And even if you were, your body would know. Because you've learned to tell the equator by how the sweat dries on your back. You've learned to feel longitude in the direction of sunburn. You've learned to read cloud height in the tension behind your ears. This isn't mystical. It's muscle. It's memory. It's the kind of knowledge that accumulates one sunbeam at a time, one goosebump, one ankle in the shade, while the other toasts in tropical light. One foot on fire, the other frozen. You smile. You're right where you're supposed to be. You sit again beside your canoe, tracing the ridges of the paddle with your fingers, listening not just to the wind or the waves, but to something softer. You tilt your head. There. It's faint, but you hear it. Not a voice, not a drum beat. Just a low, continuous murmur beneath everything else. Like the sea has a second breath, a sigh held in reserve. You shift forward on the sand, close your eyes, and focus on the sound. It's not coming from the forest, not the wind, not birdsong. It's coming from the water. You crawl closer, belly low, and press your ear to the ground just above the tide line. And then you feel it. Not just a sound, but a vibration. Deep, rhythmic. Like someone's gently knocking on the other side of the planet. The shell. You reach into your canoe and retrieve it, a large, spiraled conch you've carried since you left home. You don't use it as a trumpet. You use it as an amplifier. You hold it to your ear like a child pretending to hear the sea and smile because it's so much more than pretend. The sound inside the shell isn't just random noise. It's the echo of pressure, of movement, of deep swells wrapping around the edges of islands miles away. It's the long-distance call of the Pacific. And today it has a message. It's shifting. There's a change in the tone, not in volume, but in pitch. A slight thickening of the hum, the kind that usually means a distant weather pattern is moving. Maybe not a storm, but something big enough to alter the swells. It might hit tomorrow, might not touch you at all, but the shell knows before the sky does. You lean back and sigh. Historians still debate whether early navigators used tools like conch shells or if they relied solely on raw perception. The truth is, both are true. The shell isn't a device, it's an extension, a way to hear what your skin already suspects. A quirky tradition from the northern islands: when a navigator reached old age, he would be buried with his shell, not just for ceremony, but so that if the earth ever needed him again, it could whisper into the shell and wake him. You're not old, not yet, but you feel older every time you listen this way. You sit still for a long time, the shell cupped against your ear, until the message fades into ambient oceanic buzz. No new information, just the regular song now. You lower the shell gently, almost apologetically, and set it back inside the canoe. Then you lie down on the sand, arms stretched wide, and let your ear press directly against the earth. It's louder this way. The ground transmits vibration like a drum skin, and what you feel now is subtle but clear. A rolling pulse, steady and slow, a sign of a southbound current hitting an underwater slope somewhere nearby. It's a giveaway that a deeper trench lies just offshore, which means certain fish will be passing through soon. Tuna, probably. Maybe even manta rays. You whisper tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll fish. Not today. Today you're listening. You let your eyes drift open and stare at the canopy above. The leaves are still wet from the earlier rain, and now the sun has returned to coax steam from them. The result is a soft, shimmering haze. The light wavers, dances, and for a moment you see it. Not clearly, not physically, but somewhere in the edges of the shimmer, a face. Maybe your grandfather, maybe someone even older. A presence just like in the clearing. No sound, just there. You don't speak. You don't need to. The ocean, the earth, the shell, they've all been talking to you since you arrived. Today isn't for action. It's for confirmation. You've made it, and the sea knows. You sit up slowly and brush sand from your elbows. Your stomach grumbles again, mildly, not urgently. You'll eat soon. Breadfruit, maybe. There's a tree not far from the shore and a few fallen ones waiting to be roasted. But even food can wait when the sea is whispering. You return to the shell, touch it once more, and whisper a single word. Again. Because you know this isn't your last voyage. Not by a long stretch. The ocean is never silent. It's just waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear it. And now you can. You wake the next morning to birdsong and breeze. Not just any birdsong, this one is different. Sharper, more insistent. It's the call of a frigate bird, high above, cutting the sky like a kite with an attitude. You recognize the tone instantly. It's the sound birds make when they're gearing up for travel. You sit up, rubbing your eyes still crusted with sleep and ocean salt. The canoe bobs gently in the water where you left it. Still tide, still loyal. The sun's just brushing the horizon, soft and honey-colored. You stretch bones cracking one by one and glance out toward the reef. The question bubbles up not as a command but a nudge. Will you go again? You've landed, sure, you've rested. You've read the sky and tasted the rain and listened to the shell. But that question's still there. It always is. Do you paddle toward emptiness again? Because that's what's out there. Nothing. Blue stretching forever in every direction, no guarantee, no second chances, just the quiet promise of maybe. And somehow impossibly, that promise is enough. You think back to what your father once said, seated in a canoe as you stared at the empty horizon for the first time. You don't sail toward land, you sail toward belief. The land just happens to be there sometimes. At the time, you thought he was being cryptic. Maybe he was. But now, as you stare out across the morning sea, it makes perfect sense. Historians still argue whether ancient voyagers truly understood the vastness of what they were doing, if they really meant to explore thousands of miles of ocean, or if they stumbled into it by accident. But the evidence doesn't lie, they didn't stumble. They chose to paddle into nothing, repeatedly, for centuries. Why? Because emptiness isn't really empty. You know this now. You've felt it. The ocean is full of signs of patterns of presence, of possibilities. But you have to go to understand it. You can't stay on the beach and wait for understanding to wash ashore like driftwood. You have to paddle into it. A quirky practice among one island group before a major voyage, the crew would sit in complete silence for one full sunrise, no talking, no chanting, no work. Just watching the horizon. The belief was that if you stared long enough into emptiness, it would eventually blink first. You sit now mimicking that practice, hands on your knees, eyes fixed on the line where sky meets water. You don't blink. You just watch. Minutes pass, the sun rises, the birds shift higher, your heartbeat steadies. And the sea doesn't blink, but you feel it nod. Yes. You rise, brush the sand from your legs, and begin checking the canoe. Paddles fine. Lashing still tight. Hull dry inside. You run your hand along the side, muttering a chant, not to summon anything, but to settle your own nerves. Because this isn't like before. Before you were trying to arrive, now you're choosing to leave. That's different. The breadfruit you found yesterday, you pack it. A few roasted pieces wrapped tightly in leaves. Enough to last a day or two if you portion right. Your water supply is thin, but you know the sea, know the rhythms, the rain, the signs. You'll find more if you listen. You secure everything and climb aboard. The canoe tilts, then rights itself. Familiar, steady. The outrigger dips into place, trailing gently in the shallows. You glance once more at the beach. No goodbye needed. The island doesn't demand thanks. It knows what it gave you. You push off. The hull scrapes sand, slides into deeper water. You paddle slowly at first, feeling the resistance of the lagoon fade. The water darkens to sapphire, the reef nears. You time the pass like a heartbeat, sinking strokes with swells. No second thoughts, no backward glances. And just like that, you're outside again. Back into the vast. The clouds have formed new shapes. The wind is different. The swell has changed angle, all familiar, all slightly new. You're not following a map this time. Not chasing a destination. You're doing the most terrifying, most human thing possible. You're sailing into nowhere, and you're doing it on purpose. Because that's what the best navigators do. They paddle toward emptiness not to escape, but to discover. And this time, you're ready. The reef slips behind you like a closing door, quiet and smooth. You don't look back. You don't need to. The island did what it needed to do. It caught you held. You whispered to you in rain and shadow and song. But it was never the final stop. The ocean waits ahead, not roaring, not menacing, just vast. It stretches in all directions, flat as a breath held too long. You're back in the silence now, back in the hum, The first few strokes of your paddle feel stiff. Your arms remember the rhythm, but they're not sure if they trust it yet. Your shoulders ache. Your back twitches in protest. Your stomach grumbles again louder this time, but your mind is steady. You've already crossed this threshold before leaving land choosing risk. But this time it feels different. You're not fleeing, you're not searching, you're testing. You lean slightly and listen not to the water this time, but to the canoe. It speaks in creaks and vibrations, a language you've learned in your bones. You feel how it rides the swell, how the outrigger brushes the surface with each dip. Balanced, responsive. The canoe is with you. That's all you need. The sky above is empty, clean of clouds for now, but the light is changing. You glance eastward. A strange pale glow lingers there. Not sunrise, it's already mid-morning. This is something else. A reflection. A distortion. You squint. Could be a high-pressure shift. Could be just the sun bouncing off the tops of unseen swell. Or maybe it's a tilapa. You sit up straighter, eyes wide. Tilapa, the light that runs through water. Not many have seen it. Fewer believe it. But you've heard the stories how in the right conditions a thin shaft of flickering light shoots underwater pointing toward land. Not directly visible above the surface, only through sea, only at certain times. Only if you know to look. You stare, hold your breath, watch. And for a split second, maybe less, you see it. A quick white pulse like someone flicked a flashlight underwater and turned it off again. It streaks straight ahead. You blink and it's gone. You don't move, just wait. And then it happens again. Historians still argue whether tilapa is a real measurable phenomenon or a myth wrapped in bioluminescent fishtails. But Pacific navigators never needed validation. They saw it, they followed it, and many times it led them to land. A quirky tidbit some elders claim tilapa could only be seen with peripheral vision, that looking straight at it made it vanish. You try it now, angling your head just slightly, watching from the corner of your eye. There, again, faint but there. You mark the direction mentally. Not straight east, more northeast. You adjust your course 2 degrees, nothing dramatic. You'll confirm it later with star positions, cloud shapes, birds. But for now, you trust the flash. You paddle onward, each stroke gentler now, as if trying not to disturb the current of light beneath you. The sea responds with its usual rhythm. Breathe in, breathe out. The swell rolls gently under the canoe, a reminder that you're never really still. You pause and glance at the sky again. A few high clouds have begun forming, trailing long tails like ink dragged across parchment. Mare's tails, they're called. Indicators of wind moving quickly at high altitude. If they thicken, you'll see change by evening. But for now, all is stable. You reach down and trail your fingers in the water. It's cooler than it was yesterday. You pull up a handful and smell it, still salty, yes, but clearer. Cleaner. Less touched by lagoon runoff. You've moved beyond the island's influence now. The sun warms your back. The wind lifts gently from behind, the perfect kind for sailing, but today you're paddling. Deliberate. Meditative. You hum a line from your chant under your breath. Not the full verse, just the opening. Where light runs, silent path lies hidden. It's a line few remember. You were taught it late by a half-blind cousin who only sailed at night. He swore that tilapa was the ocean's secret handshake, a quiet agreement that if you listened hard enough, it would tell you where to go. You believe him now. Still, light alone won't guide you forever, so you fall back into habit. You start cataloging your surroundings again. Swells, sky, currents, clouds. You're forming a mental map with every moment. This part of the journey is all about building trust with the sea, with your canoe, with yourself. You check the swell's rhythm. Long intervals, wide shoulders, slow lifts. Likely born near the equator, maybe farther. That's good. It means it'll carry you for hours without sudden shifts. You feel your shoulders loosen. The horizon remains clear, no islands in sight. Just sky touching water, infinite and patient. And still you paddle forward. Into nowhere, not because you're lost, but because something, a flash, a hum, a whisper said, go this way. And for a navigator like you, that's all the reason you need. The afternoon stretches long and golden, the sun angling downward like it's in no particular hurry to disappear. You paddle through it smooth, steady strokes, not forcing speed, just staying in rhythm with the swell. The canoe glides effortlessly, your paddle barely making a sound. There's peace in this kind of movement. Not stillness exactly, because nothing out here is ever truly still, but balance. Every action fits. Every sound has its place. Even your thoughts feel quieted, lulled into simplicity. And that's when you hear it. A high, distant cry, sharp, short, rising in pitch. You pause, lifting your head. Another call follows, then another. Birds. They're high up, too high to see immediately, but you know the sound. White terns, maybe, or shearwaters. The kind of birds that don't cry unless they've seen something worth circling. Your eyes scan the sky, nothing yet. You paddle a few strokes forward, gently shifting your angle. The birds are still calling. Now you see them, tiny dots above, circling tight in wide spirals. And then just below them you catch it. A speck. Dark, small, not land. Something moving. A fish boil. You steer closer. The ocean is suddenly alive, a churning knot of silver as small fish explode upward, scattering like metal confetti. Something hunts beneath them, fast, focused, likely tuna, maybe mackerel. You drift closer, paddle tucked across your lap. The birds dive, wings slicing like blades into the chaos, snatching up the leaping bait fish midair. The water froths. You smile. It's not just dinner, it's data. Fish don't boil at random. The currents that gather bait fish tell you about underwater ridges and temperature shifts. Tuna tend to run along the boundary between warm and cool water. That means a convergence is nearby, possibly even a sea mount beneath you. And where the ocean changes, land sometimes follows. Historians still argue whether navigators used feeding fish as signs of proximity to islands. But if you've ever seen the way birds and fish organize themselves in open water, you wouldn't ask. You retrieve your line from the canoe's edge, a simple setup, just twine and a bone hook weighted with shell. No rod, no fancy gear, just a nod of instinct and luck. You bait it with a sliver of roasted breadfruit skin and lower it into the froth. Nothing at first. Then a tug, sharp. You pull fast. A flash of silver arcs through the air, slapping into the canoe with a wet thud. You grab it, a small jack, maybe 1.5 pounds, just enough for the next meal. It flaps once, then stills. You whisper thanks, not out of superstition, out of memory. You were taught early, when you take something alive from the sea, you speak to it. You acknowledge the gift. You rinse your hands, wash the spot where the fish landed, and stow it in a net. That's enough. You're not greedy. You didn't come out here to fill baskets. Just to confirm the signs. You look up again. The birds are drifting away now, spiraling wider, then veering westward. The boil ends, the sea flattens. But it's changed. You feel it. The swell now has an odd rhythm. Not broken, just confused. You bounce slightly. Something is pushing from the opposite direction now. Not enough to alter your course, but enough to signal a shift. You brace your paddle and test a few strokes. The resistance increases just slightly. Wind, no. You check the surface, no foam, no cross-chop. It's current. Beneath you, water is moving in a different direction than before. It curves west to east now, brushing against the hull like a nudge. You smile. That means underwater structure, something big enough to redirect the deep flow. You mutter a line you haven't used in a long time. When fish dance and water leans, the earth waits just beneath. You don't need sonar to know when you're near something. You just need fish, birds, and current. Nature's live feedback. A quirky trick your cousin once shared: if your canoe starts yawning slightly, tilting to one side over and over, even in calm water, it means the seafloor is rising underneath. He called it sea breathing against its bed. You didn't believe him until you felt it for yourself. You check now. The canoe's balance shifts every 15 seconds. Not a full tip, just a gentle rhythmic lean. And it's regular. You're passing over something. Could be a reef. Could be a submerged ridge. Could be the foundation of an island too young to show its face. Or maybe it's a waymarker. One of the many invisible landmarks that seasoned navigators pass, recognizing not shape but behavior. How the sea moves differently over this exact spot, like a signature written in motion. You paddle gently on, humming under your breath. The song matches your stroke, now low, even repetitive. The sun begins to soften. The wind picks up slightly, brushing your back. You glance upward. One star twinkles early just above the eastern horizon. It's too bright for its time. You note its position. Soon you'll use it. But for now the fish are fed. The birds are gone. The current has shifted. And beneath you something speaks without words. You listen. You lean forward. And you paddle toward it. The sun sinks lower now, its gold fading into amber, then rust. The sky ahead is smeared with long streaks of violet and pale blue, a watercolor of falling light. You paddle gently through it, the surface of the sea glowing like a mirror that remembers fire. You've entered the evening zone, the space between effort and rest, between brightness and dark. And it's here in this exact moment that your mind starts to shift. Not with fatigue, with focus. Because now it's not about sight, it's about feeling. You stop paddling and let the canoe drift. The swell carries you like a slow breath. You sit upright, eyes closed, arms at your sides. And you begin the calibration. You feel for balance. You feel for pull. You feel for that almost imperceptible tug, a slant to the left, a dip to the right. Something subtle, something that says the sea is uneven here. And it is. You shift your weight slightly to the right. The canoe tilts, then evens out. You do it again, slower this time. And then you feel it. The faintest downward push, as if the water is just a little heavier on one side. This is what your grandfather meant when he said the sea whispers in pressure. You open your eyes and scan the horizon again. Nothing yet. No land, no change in the surface. But you know you're approaching something. Historians still debate whether Polynesian navigators truly read the underwater topography by canoe tilt, or whether it's a romanticized exaggeration. But you've lived it. The ocean has texture, and when it changes, so does the canoe. Tonight the canoe is speaking and tilts and pauses. You run a hand along the lashings of the outrigger, just checking. Still firm, still humming gently with each bounce. The outrigger is your early warning system. If you tip too far, if the swell shifts sharply, that side float will tell you first. You once heard a story of a navigator who could feel a submerged atoll before anyone else noticed it. He never saw it, never smelled it. He felt it half a day before the island broke the horizon. His explanation, "My canoe woke up. You feel yours stirring now." It doesn't panic, doesn't strain, just adjusts. The swell comes from the east now, but there's something underneath. A bounce back, a return wave. The sea is responding to a presence, something solid, something shallow. And that's when you remember the chant. Beneath the lull, the reef must rise. Rock meets sea where echo lies. You reach down and press your palm to the surface. The water is still warm, but the motion has changed. It no longer pulls in long, steady lines. Now it pulses 2 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause. That's reef behavior, the sea hesitating over uneven terrain. You glance upward. The sky has dimmed enough that stars begin appearing one by one, as if someone is punching holes in a black sailcloth. You spot your favorite first bright low on the eastern side. The same star that welcomed you 3 nights ago when you departed the last island. You check its position, slightly lower than expected. That confirms it. You're farther north than before. The canoe told you first. You pull the paddle and angle slightly to correct. Just a few degrees. Doesn't take much. In these wide expanses, a shift that feels minor now could mean missing an entire island chain tomorrow. The outrigger hums in response to the new course. It feels right. And then suddenly the air changes. Not cold, not sharp, but heavier. The breeze carries a new scent, a mix of wet stone, damp leaves, and something sweet. Not flowers, not fruit, just land. You sit up straighter. The smell is soft, not constant. It wafts in with the swell, then fades, then returns. That's the signal. You don't celebrate, not yet. But you allow yourself one word. Closer. A quirky ritual comes to mind in some traditions. Navigators would sing a specific line when they first smelled land, even if it was still days away. The song wasn't to summon land, but to thank the sea for the signal. You sing it now under your breath. Low wind, slow tide, carry me to scent and guide. The words aren't magic, but they work. You paddle again now with more purpose. The stars guide you above and the water guides you below. Your canoe is aligned with both. It's dark now, full dark, no moon yet. Just stars and wind and the occasional slap of wave on wood. But you're not worried. You can't see where you're going, but that's fine. You can feel it. The canoe hums, the wind steadies, the water holds its breath. And somewhere out there, the next island waits, unseen, unnamed, perhaps even uninhabited, but real, and soon it will rise. The stars shine harder, now clearer than they've been in days. No moon yet, so they stretch bold and arrogant across the sky like they own it. You look up and almost laugh because out here they do. You pause the paddle, letting the canoe drift so you can adjust your eyes fully to the dark. The sea is calm, nearly silent. Your body sways slightly with each rise and fall of the swell. You're floating in a bowl of stars, one set above, one set reflected below. You don't bother checking your gourd. You know you're low on water. Your stomach reminds you you've had nothing since that jackfish earlier. But hunger and thirst have faded into the background hum now, like a fridge you forget is running. You're in the middle of something older than appetite. The stars overhead begin their slow rotation. You track the familiar ones first. The Southern Cross tilted, now leaning just above the horizon. You check its angle, still about 2 fists above the water. That gives you your latitude, no instruments needed. You hold out your hand, measure the space. Still on track. Then you shift your gaze to the east. A cluster rises there, low, flickering, not yet fully defined. You squint, then exhale. There it is, the turtle star. Not its real name, of course, but that's what your elders called it. Its rising marks a new cycle. It was the first star you ever memorized. You watch it climb. This is where things get interesting, because now you're not navigating with the big showy stars. You're using the quiet ones, the lesser lights, the ones that don't shout directions but whisper them. A line from your chant returns to you. When Turtle Star turns in the tide, point your bow and do not hide. It's rising straight ahead. You paddle 2 strokes to bring your nose back in line with it. The outrigger shifts ever so slightly, as if nodding in agreement. Historians still puzzle over the accuracy of these chant leans. They wonder, did the stars really rise in such precise locations? Could memorized chants truly replace maps? You know the answer? They didn't replace maps. They were the maps. Each star marked a turn, a midpoint, a warning, a promise. And right now, the stars are promising you're not lost. But here's the twist: the stars don't get you all the way. At some point, the sea takes over. That's happening now. You feel it in your ribs first, a vibration subtle but steady. Not from the canoe, not from your body, from below. You lean down, press your ear against the hull. There it is again. A pulse. 3 slow beats. Pause, then again. This is new. You sit up, paddle suspended midair. It's not current, not fish, not wind. It's the earth. You've entered the zone where underwater ridges send out pressure waves. You've felt them before, but this one is rhythmic, regular. Could be a volcanic shelf, maybe even a submerged island. You whisper to yourself, we're not in empty water anymore. A quirky belief you remember: some navigators swore that when you entered a space claimed by sleeping land, the canoe would begin to resist just slightly. Not enough to stop you, just enough to let you know this place remembers. You check the paddle. There's no drag, but the air around you feels heavier. That's the thing about invisible islands, ones that don't break the surface but still exist beneath. They're not destinations, they're thresholds. You paddle on, but slower now, listening, watching. The turtle star rises higher. More constellations emerge, fainter ones. You recognize the net, the slanted eye, the singing line. All names handed down, none of them scientific, but useful. You know that when the slanted eye aligns with the singing line, it means you're within 2 days of landfall if your course holds and the wind doesn't betray you. Tonight they align. You breathe in slow and deep. You paddle once, twice, then rest again. You're not tired, not truly, just aware. You think back to something your great aunt used to say. She never voyaged herself, but she kept all the songs, all the chants. The stars will guide, but the sea will test. If you don't pass, you don't arrive. You feel tested now, not by storms or hunger or fear, by silence. There's no applause here, no welcome party. Just stars watching, swell nudging, water waiting. It's easy to feel small in this vastness, but you don't. You feel part of it. The sky isn't a dome above you, it's your ceiling. The ocean isn't an obstacle, it's your road. The canoe isn't a raft, it's your memory shaped like a vessel. You paddle once more, watching the stars, listening for the pulse, waiting for the moment, quiet, unannounced, when something will change again. When the sea will say now, but for tonight it just hums. And you hum with it. The sea has gone velvet, not soft like silk or smooth like polished wood. Velvet textured, dark, full of weight you can feel without touching. The stars gleam off its surface in faint, broken lines. Your paddle barely disturbs it now. Each stroke whispers instead of splashing. You glance upward, tracking the position of the singing line. It's moved westward, leaning slightly, just as expected. You nod to yourself. Still on course. Still within the pocket of trust between swell and star. But something's changed. Not in the sky, not in the water. In the air. You breathe in slowly. There's something new, something faint dryness. The air that was heavy with moisture earlier now feels lighter. It's not a big shift, just enough to make your tongue stick slightly to the roof of your mouth. You know what that means. Wind is coming. Not yet, not loud. But it's building back there beyond the horizon where night hasn't arrived yet. You were taught to sense it early, to feel the wind long before it arrives by changes in scent and the way your skin tightens ever so slightly across your arms. Tonight your skin is trying to tell you something. You glance east again, stars still steady. No clouds, no pressure breaks in the sky. But your gut knows. A wind is forming and it's headed your way. Historians often try to pin this kind of wind sensing to science barometric pressure-temperature gradient, the drop of humidity. But you've always known it's simpler than that. You can feel approaching wind the way some people sense they're being watched. It's not logic, it's a presence. You adjust your position slightly, bracing your knees against the side of the canoe, shifting your paddle grip. You're not preparing for a storm, just a shift. Enough to change your timing, enough to test your course. And sure enough, 20 minutes later it arrives. First as a sigh, then as a breath, then as a conversation. It brushes the water beside you, then lifts your hair gently. The outrigger shifts, the hull creaks. You brace your feet wider and grin. Hello, friend. It's a crosswind, not ideal, but manageable. Strong enough to steer you off course if you ignore it. Gentle enough to use if you respect it. So you do. You adjust your angle, just a degree or two. You paddle harder on the left, easing your right arm. The canoe responds like a cat, changing direction mid-pounce, smoothly, silently, with its own agenda. This is the part no one talks about, the real part. The moment when you are not the master of the canoe, but also not its servant. You're its partner. You're dancing. And like any good dance partner, you listen more than you lead. You find the wind's rhythm. You let it nudge. You let it push. But you never let it decide. You glance back at the trail you've carved, small ripples barely visible, forming a subtle arc now shaped by your new heading. You're adjusting on the fly. Literally. A quirky tradition pops into your mind. Some navigators would carry a feather tied to the front of the canoe. Not to look fancy, to read the wind. A single glance at the angle of the feather's flutter told them which way the breeze was shifting. You never had a feather. You learned to use your cheekbones. Now they tingle slightly on the right side. Wind's holding steady. Good. You hum again. Not a chant, not a song. Just a sound to match your motion. A low rhythm that syncs with paddle wave body. Above, more stars have appeared. One cluster glows like spilled sugar. You smile, you know that one. It rises high before a northeast current. It's confirmation. Your direction is sound. The wind isn't sabotage, it's reinforcement. And the sea, still velvet, still deep. Still carrying the long, low swell beneath you. You feel everything at once, the wind in your hair, the stars above the sway of the outrigger, the ache in your palms, the memory of fish boiling behind you, the scent of invisible land ahead. You think of your ancestors not in abstract terms, but vividly. You see them crouched in similar canoes bent over paddle, whispering into the dark. You think of a woman, maybe your great great aunt, with tattooed hands gripping a paddle half her weight. She sailed this same stretch, humming the same low rhythm, trusting the same sky. You think of a boy no older than 12 eyes wide as he spotted a land cloud for the first time. You think of the ones who never made it, whose canoes never landed, whose bones whispered to passing fish instead of descendants. You paddle for them too, because the sea remembers. It remembers every attempt, every chant, every correction in the wind, and it rewards the ones who keep listening. The breeze steadies now. Your arms settle into the new angle. The stars hold. The canoe glides. And for one perfect moment, you feel like you're floating in a story older than language. You paddle forward, not chasing anything, just becoming it. The sea has grown stranger in the last hour. Not louder, not stormier, just less predictable. The swells aren't as rhythmic as before. They come at slightly odd angles now, like someone's tapping the table out of time. One wave lifts you gently, the next dips the outrigger too far, then a lull. Then two quick nudges from behind. You pause, rest your paddle across your lap, and sit still, letting the water tell its story. The stars overhead remain fixed and clear, so you know you're not turning. You haven't drifted far from your heading, but the water below is changing. You look down and notice it, the reflection of the stars has blurred. It's not the wind, it's the current. Currents are like moods, subtle and visible and prone to shift without warning. You feel this one running against your canoe's underside, like the faint tension of someone walking past you in a narrow hallway, not hostile, just insistent. You trail your hand in the water. Cooler than before, and faster. Definitely a current line. You're crossing into a new body of water, one that carries its own tempo, its own rules. The warm, even swell you've been riding is giving way to something else, something layered. You hum to steady your breathing. This isn't bad, this is information. You remember a lesson from your uncle, one of those wide-eyed, sand-caked men who only spoke in metaphor. When the sea jostles your canoe like an impatient friend, you're about to learn something. And you are. This jittery rhythm, this resistance, it means you're crossing the edge of a cold water tongue. A long wedge of current sliding out from somewhere deeper, possibly from under an unseen reef shelf or volcanic wall. Historians still argue how early voyagers distinguished warm from cold currents without thermometers. But if you've ever spent nights at sea, you know your feet learn it first. You check yours now. Right foot warm, left foot tingling. You shift slightly. The boundary is right under you. So you lean left, letting the canoe ease toward the colder stream. Why? Because cold water pulls nutrients upward, feeding plankton, feeding bait fish, feeding bigger fish, which means food, which means birds, which means land. It's not a perfect rule, but the Pacific doesn't run on perfection. It runs on patterns. And this is one. You paddle gently now, letting the current assist instead of resisting it. The canoe lifts slightly but stays upright. You adjust every few strokes, body shifting, core engaged. It's a small dance, subtle, tiring, but it's working. And just as you hit your rhythm again, you notice something odd ahead. Small flashes just above the horizon. Not lightning, too low. Not stars, too irregular. You squint. They flicker, disappear, flicker again. And then you realize it's reflections. Clouds, a low cluster hanging over something you can't quite see. They call them land clouds, flat-bottomed, stationary, moisture-heavy. They only form when warm, wet sea air meets cooler air rising from a solid surface like trees, or hills, or cliffs. They don't drift like storm clouds, they hover, and they only hover over land. You stop paddling and just watch. The clouds don't move. They glimmer faintly in the starlight. Not white, more like bruised silver. Still, steady. You whisper aloud, there you are. You aren't hallucinating. This isn't hope. This is confirmation. A quirky practice from some islanders when a land cloud was spotted. The navigator would throw a handful of seawater into the air and listen for the droplets. If they fell sharply, it meant dry air above likely still open sea. If they landed softly like mist moisture saturation, land close. You try it now grinning at yourself. The droplets fall like dust. You nod. Definitely land. Not close enough to see, not close enough to smell, but close enough to matter. You resume paddling, aiming for the cloud. You're not in a rush. Rushing leads to mistakes. You're pacing, letting the sea do half the work. You pass another current boundary an hour later. This one's warmer. The canoe rolls slightly, then evens. You adjust again. Every bit of water under you has a story. Every star overhead has a name. And every shift in pressure, every odd bounce, every sudden calm, that's the sea whispering. Keep going. You're almost there. The land cloud hangs still ahead, unmoving, unwavering, as if someone pinned it to the sky. You don't need to paddle hard anymore. You just drift toward it, the current working in your favor, now guiding you like a conveyor belt beneath the stars. The stars themselves have shifted again. You glance up to confirm. The slanted eye now leans farther west. The singing line has nearly dropped out of view. All according to plan. You're deep into the rhythm now. The part of the voyage where your body becomes the tool. No compass, no chart, just spine gut paddle. You haven't needed to measure anything in hours. You feel your way forward. This isn't travel, it's memory playing itself forward through muscle and breath. And then the water changes again. It's subtle, a texture shift. The swell softens under you, not less movement, just different movement. More bounce, less roll. That's shallow water. You brace the paddle vertically and feel its resistance. Not much, still deep but less so. The canoe rides higher, the outrigger barely skims the surface, now its hum softening. You know what this means. You're approaching the outer reef. You narrow your eyes, straining ahead. Still nothing visible. No white foam, no crashing waves. But your bones know better. You've felt this before. This part of the sea is cautious. It tries to give you a warning, but only if you're quiet enough to catch it. You pause, and you hear it. A low hiss. Barely there, not the wind, not birds. It's water pulling back from coral teeth. That hiss is the voice of reef meeting ocean even when it's hidden under tide. You tighten your grip on the paddle and steer gently left, adjusting to skirt what might be a coral head just below the surface. You've seen what those can do to the bottom of a canoe. You slow down, paddle shallow, let the water tell you what's safe. It responds in whispers, a little more give. On the right, a sudden ripple on the left. You follow those signs. Still nothing on the horizon. Just darkness, just stars. Just that glowing bruise of cloud above. But you start to smell it now. It's faint, intermittent. A mix of wet bark algae and something warm like overripe fruit left out too long. That's vegetation. Trees. And maybe people. Historians still wrestle with the question of whether early voyagers truly smelled land before seeing it. But when you're this far from nowhere, your senses stop making polite suggestions. They scream. And right now, your nose is screaming land. A quirky belief from a southern island chain comes to mind. They said if you smelled guava before seeing land, it meant the spirits were pleased. If you smelled breadfruit, it meant the ancestors were waiting. But if you smelled nothing, nothing at all, you had passed the island in your sleep. You smile. You definitely didn't pass anything. The scent strengthens. Your mouth waters despite the dryness of your throat. You'd forgotten how much smell could anchor you, could remind you that survival isn't the end goal. Arrival is. You paddle forward again now cautiously. The swell flattens more. The bounce turns to a skip. The current slows. You're officially inside the lagoon zone even if you can't see it yet. You pause and check the water with your hand. It's warmer again, shallow. You mutter a word of thanks. You're close. Then finally you see it. Not land. Light. Faint, flickering, orange. Firelight. It's tucked behind what must be tree cover, but you can see it reflecting in the mist just above the waterline. It shimmers, dances. Could be a torch. Could be a hearth. Could be someone boiling water at the end of their own long day. But it means people. You weren't aiming for an empty island, and you didn't find one. You feel the emotion rise, not relief exactly, not joy, something quieter. Recognition. This place didn't surprise you, it waited for you. Like an old friend who doesn't call ahead but leaves the door unlocked. You paddle toward the light now, steering with care. Every few strokes you glance up. Still there. Still flickering. Still real. The reef gives way beneath you with one final hiss, and suddenly you're floating on glass. The water is flat now, flatter than it's been all night. You've crossed into the lagoon. The land itself is still dark, its edges lost in shadow. But you don't need to see it to know it's there. You can feel it. And soon you'll touch it. But not yet. For now you float. For now you let the canoe coast silent and smooth. And you whisper to the sea, you did good. You drift in the lagoon like a secret. The water beneath you no longer swells, it exhales. It's quiet here, but not silent. The kind of quiet that has texture. You hear insects, distant tree frogs, and that faint splash of a fish leaping somewhere in the dark. Your paddle rests beside you, unused for the moment. The canoe glides forward on its own momentum as if it too is stunned by the sudden gentleness. For hours you were battling swell, current, and breath. Now the sea behaves like it's tucking you in. Ahead, the flickering light remains steady. You can't see the flame itself, just its glow blurred through trees and mist. But it's enough. Enough to know there's life here. Enough to know you're not the only heartbeat in this part of the ocean anymore. You breathe in, and again that smell. Now it's stronger. Charcoal, seaweed, maybe even fish being grilled. You close your eyes and let it wrap around you like a story you've already heard. You ease the paddle into the water again. Slow, quiet strokes. You're not rushing this moment. You earned this. Each inch you travel now is a reward. A silent procession. The canoe noses forward into deeper shadow. Trees rise up along the shoreline, tall and leaning, their silhouettes broken only by the occasional sparkle of dew or spiderweb catching the firelight. Somewhere among them, someone might be watching you, or maybe they're asleep. You don't mind either way. You pull closer to shore. Still no sound from land. And then you hear it, drumming, soft, irregular, like someone's tapping a hollow log with their fingers, not to play a song but to feel one. It comes from deeper inland, wrapped in the sound of cicadas and night birds. You pause your paddle and listen. A quirky tradition from an eastern atoll resurfaces in your memory. When a canoe was sighted offshore at night, the villagers would start drumming gently, slowly, to let the traveler know they'd been seen but not judged. It was a way of saying, "We know you're there. Come if you wish." You smile. They know. You drift closer, and now you can see the curve of the beach. A low sandy rise fringed with bushes and palms. The torch is stuck in the ground, flickering beside a canoe that's been pulled onto the sand. Someone else's journey, someone else's story. You ease in slowly. The canoe kisses the shallows with the softest crunch. Your outrigger rests against a gentle ripple. You step out carefully, the sand warm between your toes, the water wrapping your ankles like it doesn't want to let go. You're here. You made it. No compass, no map, just starlight, swell instinct, and songs. You drag the canoe a little farther up the beach, just enough to keep it safe from the tide. Then you sit beside it cross-legged in the sand, letting your body finally admit how tired it is. You lean back on your hands and stare up. The stars shine brighter than they did out at sea, reflected now in the still lagoon behind you. You hear the drumming pause, then resume, then stop again. Whoever's out there, they're patient. Historians still try to quantify this arrival, the navigation feat, the technique, the improbability, but you know it's not about any of that. It's about trusting nothing and finding something. That's what this was, not a test of distance, a test of belief. You think of everyone who ever made this kind of crossing. Alone, tired, uncertain, repeating the same star song, watching for a flash in the sea, feeling the wind shift, guessing but with confidence. You're part of that now, a thread in the same line. The ocean didn't hand you a welcome banner, it handed you this moment. Quiet, beautiful, earned. You sit longer than you mean to, letting the sea breeze brush against your face, letting the salt crust your lips, letting the earth feel your weight again. And then when your muscles finally twitch with the hint of standing, you hear a voice, low, calm. "You came from the west, didn't you?" You turn your head. A figure stands just beyond the tree line, barefoot, lean, holding another torch. You smile. Yes. The figure nods, stepping forward into the firelight. "Well, they say not unkindly you must be hungry." You follow the figure inland, barefoot on soft earth, the torchlight swaying gently between you. The night air wraps around you now, thicker than the sea breeze, fragrant with unfamiliar plants. Distant fire smoke and something starchy and warm like root vegetables roasting under coals. Your limbs are heavy, but your senses are sharp. Every snapped twig underfoot, every rustle in the brush, every shifting glow in the treetops. Your brain logs them all like pieces of a chant you haven't learned yet. The figure ahead, still unnamed, still quiet, says nothing more. They don't need to. You've already passed the only test that matters. You arrived. The trees thin after a short rise and you enter a clearing where other small fires crackle. A few people glance up unbothered. A child leans against a log, eyes half closed, watching you with the curiosity of someone dreaming while awake. No one asks questions. They've seen voyagers before. You're not an intruder, you're a continuation. You're led to a spot near a flat stone warm from nearby flames. A bowl of water is offered. You drink. It's cool, sweet, touched faintly by bark or root. A flavor your mouth isn't used to, but your body says yes before you finish the first sip. Then food. Wrapped in leaves, hot from the coals, you unwrap slowly, reverently. Roasted taro, sea snails, a wedge of coconut meat, a small chunk of charred fish. Everything tastes like welcome. You eat slowly, pausing between each bite, letting the textures anchor you. It's not just nourishment, it's proof. You existed at sea for days, driven only by memory and hope, and now you're here chewing something that grew in soil. There's a heaviness to it, a return. After you finish, a woman comes over and sits beside you. She says nothing for a long while, just watches the fire with you. Then she asks, "Which star brought you?" You smile, wiping your fingers. "Turtle star." She nods satisfied. "Reliable one." Historians might scoff at that stars aren't people, they'll say. They don't care if you follow them or not. But they've clearly never relied on one for survival. Because you do come to think of stars as personalities, as companions, as guides with quirks. The turtle star never led you astray, so yes, it's reliable. The woman pulls something from a pouch at her waist, a small carved pendant, shaped like a bird in flight. She presses it into your palm. "For the next trip," she says. "Not if you leave, not whether you return. Just next. Because every arrival is temporary." That's one of the stranger truths about wayfinding. The goal is never to stop. It's to continue. Even when you find land. Even when you find food and people and calm. There's always another horizon. You sit in silence for a while longer, watching sparks drift upward and disappear into the canopy. A breeze shifts through the clearing, rustling palm fronds with a whisper like waves against your canoe. You wonder how many voyagers have sat here before you, legs aching lips, salt-cracked bellies newly full. You wonder how many gave thanks to the same stars, slept under the same trees, heard the same night insects buzzing in the exact same tempo. You're part of that now. One link in an unbroken chain stretched across centuries and waves and wind. A quirky bit of local lore, one island group believed that every successful arrival added a new line to the stars, a thin silver thread connecting land to land. The more voyages made, the more tangled the sky became. In time, the whole night was filled with threads. You stare upward now, wondering if your line's been added. The stars don't answer, but the wind does. It brushes your skin gently like a grandmother smoothing your hair. You lie back on the earth, the carved pendant resting on your chest, your eyes softening. The fire crackles. The sea is far now, but you can still feel it humming beneath the ground. Like it misses you already. You let your breath slow. You let the night hold you. And you don't dream of home. You dream of roots. Because even now, even with a belly full of taro and ash on your fingertips somewhere inside you, the canoe is already shifting its weight. It's already asking, when do we leave again? Morning sneaks in sideways, not with fanfare. No trumpeting birds or bursting colors, just a slow seep of pale light through the canopy. A softening of shadows, a warm hush across your skin. You open your eyes and blink once, twice, then sit up slowly. Your legs ache. Your shoulders are stiff. Your lips are still crusted faintly with salt. But you've slept. Fully. On land. On solid, unmoving, fragrant land. You hear someone stirring near the fire pit. Quiet movements, a pot being lifted, shells rattling. Someone hums a low tune, something between a lullaby and a warning. You don't understand the words, but you understand the rhythm. It's the kind of song sung while waiting or preparing. You rise, stretch carefully, and glance around. The clearing is smaller by day, less mythical, but still lovely. Palm trees lean like tired dancers, and the ground is soft with fallen leaves. Your canoe rests just beyond the trees, right where you left it, shadowed and silent like a well-behaved dog. You walk to it and place a hand on its hull. It's dry now, sun-warmed. You tap the outrigger gently. It sings back a soft, hollow thud, still sound, still faithful. And in your chest something shifts. Not longing exactly, but stirring. Like a door you just closed, clicking open again. The sea is just beyond the trees. You can hear it now gentler here, held back by the reef. It murmurs, not calls. But the difference is paper thin. You turn to find the woman from the night before sitting near the fire watching you. She gestures for you to join her. You do. She offers you a wooden bowl of broth, savory, smoky, flecked with bits of root and seaweed. You sip slowly. It wakes you better than sunlight. You rested, she says. You nod. She nods back. There's no ceremony, no fanfare, just acknowledgement. In this world, arriving safely is enough cause for quiet celebration. Then she points to the sea. You'll go again. It's not a question. You chuckle. Maybe not today? She shrugs. Tomorrow, then. You glance back at your canoe. The wind has already shifted, blowing lightly from the north now, good for a westward start. The ocean doesn't wait for declarations. It just continues moving. And if you don't move with it, you become part of the stillness. That's fine for some. But not for you. Historians still debate how quickly ancient navigators turned around, whether they stayed months on land or just long enough to trade and eat before departing again. But you've heard the stories passed down in chant, some left again within days because staying felt more dangerous than sailing. There's something in that. A quirky bit of seafarer lore on some islands, voyagers weren't allowed to touch soil with bare feet until they had named every island they'd passed. If they failed, they had to return and sail the route again. A test of memory, not strength. You pass your hand through the dirt now. You've named your path. You've earned your rest. But it won't last. The woman eyes you sideways. You'll want to speak to the elder before you go, she says. He watches the birds. You raise an eyebrow. What kind of birds? She smiles, the kind that don't migrate. They just know things. You finish your broth and rise, muscles groaning like old floorboards. She points inland. A narrow path shaded and lined with pale stones. The trees hush as you walk. The elder's hut is simple. Raised slightly on stilts, surrounded by woven mats and bundles of drying herbs. He's outside sitting cross-legged, carving a piece of driftwood with a coral blade. A pair of black naughty birds perch near him, quiet, blinking slowly like sleepy monks. He glances up. You came in last night. You nod. He doesn't return the gesture, just turns his carving slightly. You came from open water, not along the chain. Smart. The chain's angry this time of year. You sit across from him, letting your legs find a comfortable angle. I'll leave soon, you say more to yourself than him. He scratches behind one bird's neck. It leans into his finger like a cat. They'll help you, he says. The birds? He nods. They don't guide, they confirm. Follow them only when you already know where you're going. You squint toward the sea. What if I don't? He shrugs, then stay until you do. You both sit in silence for a while. The birds blink. The carving continues. The air smells of hibiscus and salt. Finally, he says they fly out every morning. Straight line. Always toward food. Sometimes toward fish, sometimes toward memory. You smile. What direction? He points west without looking. Same way you came. Same way you'll go again. Because no matter how sweet the land, how warm the broth, how gentle the hands that offer it, you are still a creature of salt and starlight, still a whisper in the ocean's throat, and the canoe is still waiting. The next morning you leave before the birds do. The stars have only just faded, leaving the sky a soft, bruised blue like it stayed out too late. The wind is light, pulling gently from the east, just enough to promise movement without shouting for it. You slide the canoe into the water without fanfare, the outrigger catching the first ripple like it's been waiting for it all night. No one sees you off. Not the woman, not the elder, not the birds. And that's exactly right. Departures like arrivals don't need applause, they just need intention. You step into the canoe, let the balance settle, then press your paddle gently into the water. The current greets you like an old friend. Familiar pressure, familiar resistance. You're not breaking into anything, you're rejoining something. Out past the reef, the swell picks up again. Not much. Just enough to cradle you back into rhythm. The land behind you begins to shrink. The firelight is long gone. Only the outline of trees remains silhouetted against the slow glow of the sky. You glance to the east. The turtle star has already dipped below the horizon. It led you here? Now it's someone else's turn to follow it. You scan for new guides. And there they are. The birds. Two of them circling above, then peeling off westward, same heading as yesterday's land cloud, same heading as the elder pointed. They're not migrating, they're checking, returning to where they know food lives. You nod and adjust your angle, aligning with their arc. Not following, confirming. That's the difference. You paddle steadily, letting the day warm around you. The salt is already forming at the corners of your mouth again. The ache in your shoulders is returning like a polite but insistent cousin. The canoe creaks faintly as if clearing its throat before singing. You're back in the pulse now. The stars are gone, but their echoes remain in the alignment of your paddle, in the shape of the swell, in the quiet math you do in your head without even realizing. Wind angle, wave timing, bird arc, cloud rise. Historians still question how precise these systems were, how accurate you really were. But accuracy is a luxury. What matters out here is harmony. If you're in harmony, you won't get lost. You'll just take the long way. A quirky story you once heard one navigator claimed he found an island by mistake because a whale surfaced beside his canoe and slapped its tail 3 times in the direction he wasn't planning to go. He changed course, found land 12 hours later. For the rest of his life, he thanked whales before every voyage, just in case. You haven't seen any whales this morning, but you do pass a flying fish one. Then 3, then a whole school skimming like silver birds across the surface. It's a good sign. They don't fly without reason. Something's chasing them. That something is food for something bigger. And that something bigger means you're in fertile waters. You log the moment. Mental note, if you're ever back this way, fly fish activity at sunrise near a westward chain. That kind of detail builds over time, not as data, as instinct. That's what this whole thing is, really. Not magic, not myth, just accumulated instinct. Layered over generations, pressed into songs, whispered across campfires, scratched into bone, taught through repetition, not lecture. You paddle on. By midday, the sky is blank. Flat blue, no clouds. The sea gleams like polished stone, no wind. You're on your own now. So you close your eyes and switch senses. The canoe creaks. The outrigger hums, the swell shifts. Your hips do tiny calculations, adjusting balance automatically. Your hands adjust paddle grip by feel. You know which direction you're drifting, not because of sight, but because your kneecaps tingle a little more when the current's against your right side. You smile. Your body is the compass now. The birds are long gone, probably fed and circling back. But you're still going forward, still cutting water with quiet, even strokes. You pass a floating log barnacle covered thick with dried seaweed. You tap it with your paddle, it rolls gently. This far out, it means a recent storm. You glance ahead. Sure enough, a cloud on the horizon, not a threat, just a puff. But worth noting, everything out here means something. You hum a chant to keep time. Nothing fancy, just syllables that match your breath and paddle. The same chant your grandfather used to murmur while shaving coconuts. You never thought it would follow you out here, but it has. You pause only once to cup a bit of water from your gourd. Still cool, still enough. You fish a sliver of dried yam from your pouch and chew slowly, letting it rehydrate in your mouth. It tastes like rope, but it keeps the stomach steady. The afternoon stretches ahead like an unrolled mat, and you keep paddling, not hurried, not guessing, not hoping, knowing. Because once you've made landfall with no compass and no map, once you've read the stars and chased the scent of trees and followed birds who never even looked at you, you understand that navigation isn't about tools. It's about trust. And out here with nothing but water beneath and sky above, you've never trusted yourself more. The afternoon sun softens, now falling lower like a tired spotlight ready to pack up. The sea around you changes color, deepens from blue to something darker, more violet than navy. That's always how it is at this hour. Water becomes ink and light becomes a memory. Your paddle rhythm slows not from fatigue but from instinct. This is the time of day when shadows start lying, when distance plays tricks, when islands hide behind the light. You take a break. Let the canoe drift and close your eyes for a few seconds. Just a few, long enough to hear the sea breathing, long enough to feel your own hands buzz with the echo of paddle strain. You open them again and scan the horizon. There, a shape. Barely there, smudged like a fingerprint on glass. It doesn't move like a cloud. Doesn't flicker like a wave crest. It's solid, small, low, maybe distant, maybe imagined. You lean forward and watch it for 3 full minutes. Doesn't grow, doesn't vanish. Which is exactly what land does at a distance. You take a slow breath, adjust your grip, paddle again. This is the part most people don't understand, the final stretch. They think arrival is joy, relief, cheers. It's not. It's tension. Because this is when doubt comes roaring back. What if it's a mirage? What if you're off course? What if that's not land but another reef? Another memory, another mistake. You've made landfall before. You've survived storms. But this stretch, this narrowing space between hope and confirmation, is always the hardest. You paddle on watching that smudge, watching it refuse to change. Historians write about these moments like they're decisive. The navigator spotted land and altered course. Simple, clean. They forget that between the spotting and the altering comes a whole wave of second guessing. Still, you trust. You keep your angle, don't chase the smudge, just align with it. Let it rise on its own. And rise it does. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. It thickens at the base, splits at the top, breaks into the familiar silhouette of palms and peaks. Trees standing on something real. It is land. You knew it. Your body knew it before your eyes confirmed it. You keep paddling, but the pace changes. Less driving, more welcoming. You're not arriving like a conqueror, you're gliding in like a whisper. Another island. Another thread in the sky. You remember the chant your uncle taught you for this moment. Not for the departure, not for the crossing, but for the second arrival. Island ahead, heart at ease, water behind stars to please. Touch the shore, then leave no mark. Return again when skies grow dark. You hum it softly now, not to call land closer, but to let the sea know you're grateful. The canoe hits new water, a slight ripple, shallower, lighter, warmer. A lagoon maybe, or just the outer edge of the island's underwater shelf. Your hull lifts a little more, the outrigger stops its quiet humming and goes still. This is what arrival feels like. Acceptance. You see a small boat pulled up on the beach. Empty, no one around, but proof of people. Another canoe, another voyager, another version of you already ashore. You aim slightly right of it toward a part of the beach where the trees bend low as if bowing. The sun is almost gone now. The last light dances off the water in shattered gold. You don't rush. You let the canoe glide until it kisses the sand. Soft, final, familiar. You step out into the warm shallows, toes sinking slightly into mud. You made it. Again. And just like before, no cheers, no banners, no feast waiting. Just land. Just the quiet knowledge that you read the sea and it answered. A quirky custom on this island chain: when someone lands safely, they press their forehead to the sand. Not for ritual, not for religion, just to remember they're smaller than the journey. You kneel, touch your head to the ground, breathe. The salt on your skin dries slowly. Your legs shake from effort. Your arms hum with emptiness. But your heart, still sailing. You rise, turn back, and glance at your canoe. It looks tired, proud. You pat it once and say softly, "Good again." And as the night creeps in, the stars begin to reappear one by one. Different arrangement. Same story. You'll sleep here tonight. Maybe trade, maybe stay a while, learn a new chant, study a new wind. But soon you'll leave again. Because you're not really looking for islands. You're looking for the space between them. You lie back on the cool sand beneath the trees, the sky above you now fully velvet again. The stars appear hesitant at first, then bold. Old friends, familiar names. A map you carry in your head, etched not in ink, but in experience. Your body aches. Deep-earned aches, the kind you can't stretch away. But you smile anyway, because you made it. Again. Another place, another thread in the great weave of ocean knowledge. Another night wrapped in starlight. Nearby, the canoe rests partly on shore, partly in the shallows. A perfect symbol, part here, part elsewhere, just like you. You think of the first time you paddled past the reef. Not as a child with someone older, but truly alone. You remember the fear, sure, but also the thrill, the not knowing. The strange hope that grew as the sea opened wide in front of you. Now you feel something else, not just hope, but ownership. Not in a colonial sense, not in a way that plants flags or claims territory. No, you own the path, the rhythm, the understanding. You know how the sea speaks. You know how the sky listens. Historians still debate whether early navigators discovered the Pacific's islands or merely stumbled upon them. They miss the point entirely. These journeys weren't accidents. They were expressions of memory, of practice, of profound intuitive science passed from mouth to ear to body. Your arrival wasn't lucky. It was deliberate. A quirky old tale circles your mind, one about a canoe that never landed, crewed by spirits who still sail between stars, guiding lost travelers with glimmers of phosphorescence and snippets of ancestral chants. People claim to hear them just before spotting land, especially when traveling alone. Tonight you don't hear voices, but you do hear the ocean. It hasn't stopped speaking since you left the last island. Its tone has changed, though, from urgent to restful, from testing to approving. It's the kind of sea that lets you sleep. You sit up for a final moment, stretch your arms toward the stars, then lower yourself into the sand, letting your head rest on your folded hands. Around you, silence. Above you, the great canopy. Within you, the whole route, every bird, every swell, every turn of wind and chant line and starlit cue. You know what comes next, not tonight, but soon. The canoe will lift again, the sea will call, and you'll answer. Not because you must, but because you can. Because this is who you are now. Not a castaway, not a tourist, not a miracle. A navigator of open oceans, of ancient knowledge, of yourself. And now, let it all fade. Let the sea soften the canoe still. Feel your breathing slow like the tide easing away from shore. Feel your body sink into the imagined sand, warm, weightless, safe. There's no more paddling to do tonight. No more stars to track, no currents to read. Just the quiet hush of the ocean's lullaby gently washing over you, smoothing every corner of your mind. Let your thoughts drift like a feather on the breeze. No need to hold on to them. Let them pass like clouds overhead. They're just weather in the mind. Remember the feel of the paddle in your hands, then release it. Remember the stars and let them twinkle quietly above you. There's nothing left to prove, nothing to fear. You're not lost. You never were. You were always part of the sea, part of the chant, part of the story. Let your breath become the swell now. In and out, in and out. Let the gentle night wrap around you like a woven mat. You're safe, you're whole, you're home for now. And maybe in your dreams you'll feel the canoe shift once more, heading toward the next horizon. But not yet. For now, just rest. Just drift. Just sleep. Sweet dreams.